Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It is the most earth-breaking, ground-shaking, but never media show money taking. The man, the myth, the legend, the most electrifying villain in all of entertainment today. The DC villain himself, General Zod. And today I am doing episode 4. I've been doing um, a dive into the DC, why I like the DC, why I think I talked about last week what I think about James Gunn taking over. But today I want to go over something that I never actually talked about. What up, Kelly Chow? Good to see you. Something I've never talked about and something that I've always wanted to address. And that is my specific thoughts on the downfall of the DCEU. And there's a lot that goes into this. And a lot better people have covered it than me. And I'm not going to compile all of the shit that goes along with this. It would be a long project. I would need to put out a video. So today I'm going to comment and critique a video that I've seen and add some of my own commentary in as well to give you guys my feelings of things as they were happening as a way to kind of highlight my feelings on the whole situation. And, each individual thing, I'm going to cover the Zack Snyder stuff with Ryan Reynolds and things like that, as covered by this channel. In the link in the description, I have also put a link to their video and their website because I like to give proper credit here. So I don't believe in ripping off people's shit. So we are going to be checking out a channel. Hey, what's up? uh, Zod, should Zack Snyder's Justice League be like a side story version? No, I don't like Zack Snyder's shit. I'll explain why when we get to that. I think people give him a lot of credit, and he had fucking terrible ideas. I like Man of Steel. BVS, I'm 50-50. I hated his fucking Lex Luthor. And Justice League, I liked his new cut, but essentially it was a whole different movie. And who knows if that was actually shot when he claims it was. A lot of it was proven that he shot these scenes given money by HBO to film it. So my feelings are I'm 50-50 about his era of Justice League, but I do have to give him credit. Stylistically and stuff, it was good. I think he needs writers. That's my personal opinion. Rebel Moon proved that, and I'll be doing a review on that piece of shit. But that's a good question. No, I don't. I think we should let this era die. Just personally, let James Gunn cook. And I'm going to show you guys in this video why I feel this way because I think people forget exactly how disconnected and disjointed the DC was. So let's take a trip down memory lane. And like I said, I want to give credit to this channel. So this is brought to us by Comics Chat. And they're a pretty cool station. I put their links in the description. Hey, Krimal. Hey, Hunter. Good to see you there. Uh, or Hunter, that was who I was answering. So, Hunter, thank you for asking the question. Very good question, by the way. I'm going to share. Hey, Christine. I'm going to share this video with you guys, and we're going to take a look. And this is a good, detailed, better history than I can. I might go slightly over an hour today because I do want to cover this whole video. But Zack Snyder fans praise him as if a god. Yes, that's the biggest thing that pisses me off, Tail. But let's take a look because a lot of this is fascinating, and I don't think people know the full history and the mishandling of DC. And that's why when I talk about this, it's very hard to lay the blame on one director, right? This is really a failure on the company themselves, much like the situation Marvel finds themselves in. So as they go through, I'm going to kind of stop and give my thoughts on this as they're talking about this. So here we go. That's just intro stuff.
Assembled some of the best comic book writers in the business to pitch their own Superman reboot that would potentially spawn a universe. Among these was the likes of Grant Morrison, Jeff Johns, Brad Meltzer, and Mark Waid. The biggest pitch came from Grant Morrison, who told them that audiences will forgive films that are bad based on characters like the Hulk, and he used the Hulk as an example, where Ang Lee's was a commercial and critical bomb and not a financial success at all, and compared it to the Incredible Hulk. And while it wasn't a financial success, he showed them that they're sticking with their idea and that the universe is going to grow, as Marvel Studios was already in early development of another 5 films, which included Captain America and Thor. WB listened to his ideas, but unfortunately there was already a conflict of interest, which was Chris Nolan and the Dark Knight duology at the time. And after pitching multiple projects and ideas, that's the last that Grant Morrison heard from them. Following that, multiple...
So before we get into Zack Snyder, and this is why I'm playing this video for you guys, because they get really in depth, and you have to know the behind the scenes for this is 20 times crazier than just Zack Snyder. And that's why when people went on a Zack Snyder campaign and shit like that, okay, I get it, because he's good at word shop, right? He knew what to say and he knew where the fans were at. But you got to understand, when you're diving to the history of these things and the way comic book movies were run back in the day, this was, in fact, the most mismanaged franchise, and why I'm so behind James Gunn fucking cleaning house, because you had all the way back in the day a great comic book artist, Grant Morris, and made some great comic book runs, pitch an idea. Now listen to this, because this is exactly what Marvel did. That let the movies come out, and if you find even a small success, still go with the projects and let it come together on its own, and don't try to force it. But the WB completely fucking ignored him and never called him back. And this is what I mean when I say the DC for years has been grossly mishandled, and why I defend it so passionately. See, Marvel fans have a reason, because their shit went according to plan, but people forget the fucking 10 movies that came out that were shitty by Marvel. It got erased by like the 20 good movies in connected universe and stuff like this. But DC was on this path. The issue is Warner Brothers fucking sucks, and always sucks as a company. And they didn't listen to these people that they specifically hired at the time, the greatest comic book writers in the industry. And yet you don't listen to them. And this is going to be a persistent problem. And to Zack's credit, Zack worked, and we'll get into the comic book artist he worked with, who made one of the most legendary comics of all time, The Dark Knight, which was a story about an older Batman retiring. He was getting too old. It's a great story. Go see it. They did a great animated film called The Dark Knight Rises. It's Batman when he's like in his like 50s, 60s. Great animated movie. But anyways, and Zack Snyder was working with those comic book artists. So he wasn't writing the stuff on his own. And that's what I mean when I say Zack Snyder can hit the visuals. He's got good ideas, but he needs somebody to write them. Otherwise, he goes off the fucking rails. So that's, and at the time, he had a team in place to help him out. And I think that's where the argument comes in for people defending Zack the way that they do, because he had these great artists behind him. But this is before Zack. Even before Zack, with Chris Nolan and what he was doing. And that's why Chris Nolan got out. He was the only director who didn't have as much overhead bullshit as any other director who's ever come into the DC projects. And I think James Gunn's got that kind of trust too, because they're so desperate right now to get this franchise back on track. Yes, The Dark Knight Returns. Thank you, Killy Chow. It's The Dark Knight Returns. Zod, is your thoughts on Jessica Green? She is 31, and do you see her as a Wonder Woman? I got to see her in the suit. She could be a good choice. I was on the fence about Gal Gadot, and she turned out to be excellent. So I have to see everything when it comes together.
Other directors and writers were brought on board. such as Mark Millar, Matthew Vaughn, and the biggest name among them all, George Miller, who of course was responsible for the Mad Max films. George Miller would go on and pitch a radical concept. To beat Marvel Studios in their plan to deliver the Avengers, he pitched a complete Justice League film, which would see the Justice League right up front being an assembled team and dealing with bigger threats on not just Earth, but in the universe. Miller's pitch was largely based on Justice League of America, Tower of Babel, and Superman Sacrifice. Over the next few months, close to half a year went by, and they assembled a whole crew for the film, which already started building sets, and then the castings followed. Armie Hammer was cast as Bruce Wayne Batman. Anton Yelchin, who just found success by being cast in J.J. Abrams' recent Star Trek reboot, was cast as Wally West, aka The Flash. Common was cast as Jon Stewart, the Green Lantern, and multiple other actors ended up joining the project, with it slated to begin production by the end of 2008. And this was after numerous start and stops that were all in effect over the course of the last year. They then announced that production would be shifting to Canada, and a ever-sliding release date would see the film shift from 2008 to 2009, and then at some point in 2010, it would see a release. During these few years, George Miller was very much still stating that he was working on the film, and we could see it by 2011 and or 2012. And while he was saying these things, that's not exactly what WB was showing, as they already scheduled a separate Green Lantern project which would star Ryan Reynolds. We'll come back to that in just a minute. But also, they announced that the third Batman film for Chris Nolan would also see a release sometime around that, and that The Flash would officially release in 2013 after about a decade of development. We'll get back to that as well. By 2011, the film was officially canceled and dead. But there was hope on the horizon. WB and DC invested heavily into the upcoming Green Lantern film starring Ryan Reynolds. This was...
And so, before we get to that, I had heard these rumors a while ago. So, DC had been pushing for, or most creators have been pushing for a Justice League movie for a while. Now, I do agree with this move WB made with canceling the Justice League Mortals, or at the very least, WB should have pushed it, because at this time, they wanted to set up the universe. Now, the problem that WB has always had is that at the time they wanted to get the hot talent, right? And not necessarily the people who were in any way, shape, or form good for the roles. And this would continue for all of DC's run. In my mind, the only interesting pick that they ever got, and this was more of a Snyder pick, which people can give him credit for, was Henry Cavill as Superman, and Ben Affleck as Batman. I don't care what people say. I think Ben Affleck was a good Batman. He just never had a chance to be Batman. And this is going to be a trend you're going to see throughout this video. And this story is the saddest of them all, because people forget that Ryan Reynolds' career, like, I laugh at this movie now, but I never realized either. And it makes sense. This movie almost fucking destroyed Ryan Reynolds. Like, people think Wolverine Origins was bad. Green Lantern and Ryan Reynolds was good. Don't make any mistake about it. He was a very good Hal Jordan Green Lantern. The issue was the rest of the movie. I mean, you had Tim Robbins in this movie. People forget this was a stacked cast. This movie almost fucking destroyed Ryan Reynolds as an actor. And people, it's wild. People have no clue that this is what happened. But seriously, guys, we almost never got Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds was considered unhireable after this movie. And let it go over it as we go. And if I'm pausing it, I do want to add my own comments, because I was in this era. And I remember, and it's interesting getting the context, because back when these were coming out, Twitter and things weren't as big as promoting or getting these stories out. And this is very fascinating, because people don't realize how many fucking careers were made but also destroyed or almost destroyed by how terrible these fucking movies were. And Ryan Reynolds couldn't get hired in Hollywood after this movie. No one would hire him at all. I forgot the movie. They finally gave him a chance, but he was relegated back to smaller comedies and stuff and started breaking out through that. I think it was like hell, Blade Trinity, and those were the ones that actually helped him out and stand out amongst the cast. But yeah, his career was almost done after this movie. It is
meant to
wild.
be a franchise starter, which would then be followed by a brand new Superman film, which was announced with no title yet, and by the formerly announced Flash film still coming out in 2013. So the release schedule looked like June of 2011, we would be getting Green Lantern. Summer of 2012, we would be getting a brand new Superman film. And 2013, in that summer, we would be seeing The Flash. Back on the Green Lantern front, things were going pretty badly, with multiple setbacks in production, but they were going to hit that June 15th release date of 2011 no matter what. Overspending money, not having a completed script, going back and asking WB for additional funding, which ended up ballooning the budget to over $450 million in the end, showed that
Just think about this. Watch that Green Lantern movie. I've watched it, I think, in my life twice. $450 million. Now, at the time when this was made, that was astronomically stupid to make a movie for. $450 million. It is the most expensive piece of shit I've ever seen in my life. And I hate to say that because there is good aspects to this movie, but it was a $450 million disaster. And this has always been an issue too with DC. And this is why I respect James Gunn, and I did a whole thing talking about him, is that he said scripts have to be done and things have to be set up before they spend money and budget. And this is what I'm talking about, where we need a Kevin over at DC, and I think James Gunn is that James Gunn is saying all of the things that needed to be said since 20 fucking since 2008 going into the later 2000s, is that, hey, why are we spending all of this money? Where's the scripts? Who's directing? Who's starring? I'm not doing casting till we write it. These are all common sense things. You would think that were being said, but some suit said, nope, we've got a date. We got to make this date. I don't give a shit how much money it is. Just do it. And that's what you get, a $450 million uh, disorganized project that makes everybody in it look like shit because they didn't even have the script done while they were trying to shoot this thing. And we've heard this story 1,000 times. It happened with Fantastic Four. That just seems to be a cursed movie all the way around back in the day. Fan Four Stick, as they called it. But that movie was just like this. They had no script. They swapped directors numerous times. And it's crazy. Um, this could have been a hit had they taken their time. But some suit was like, no, this has got to just get it out the door.
that the studio was already having trouble, but they were hopeful that this would be their Iron Man, and that was a majority of the marketing. Upon release, the film would go on to make a total of 220 million worldwide and officially be, at the time, one of the worst reviewed DC Comics and comic book films of all time. It also single-handedly hurt Ryan Reynolds' career for the better part of half a decade up until Deadpool. He would go on and say that Green Lantern hurt his career so bad that he was unhireable. Nobody would even interview him. Now,
And this is why, Kelly Chow, I disagree with that statement. Green Lantern is not better than Captain Marvel. I wish that was the case. Look, as far as the story and concept, you're right, 100%. But as far as being coherent, being watchable, I've seen Green Lantern twice. Once just to do a review on all of the DC stuff, and once in the theater. And I could tell you for certainty, there is no movie that's been made except for maybe back in the day, uh, some of the old Marvel movies, that is worse than this movie. This movie is bad. This movie is really bad. And as much as people want to talk shit about Brie Larson, that movie didn't hurt her career. The stupid shit she said made her unlikable, but I think she's done a pretty decent redemption tour. And the Marvels, at least her role wasn't as obnoxious. But what I'm saying is, this movie hurt Ryan Reynolds' career. Like, people wouldn't hire him after this movie. It was so fucking bad. Look up the scores for this. Like, this is the room level reviews from everybody, not just critics. People don't like this movie either. Like, I don't like this movie. This movie, like, is a career killer. This is the kind of movie that most actors' careers don't recover from. Tim Robbins was fine. He's an Academy Award winner, whatever. But, like, a person just starting out at this time, Ryan Reynolds was little known. This was his big breakout. He almost lost his whole entire career over this one movie. So now this movie is god awful. This is a bad movie. It's an atrocious slog.
The reason we have to talk about all of this, and I have to talk about Justice League Mortal and all of these projects, is because in 2010, during all of this turmoil, Zack Snyder was officially hired after a few successes with WB to start work on the upcoming Superman reboot, which at the time still did not have a name. The idea was that if they were able to get everything in order and Green Lantern ended up being great, they were going to shoot a quick cameo with their Superman and attach it to the end of Green Lantern. This was scrapped during early test screenings at WB, where they saw that this was not going to be a franchise starter. The decision was made to make Man of Steel the brand new start of the universe. All hands on deck. We are starting here, and this is going to be our plan. Especially.
So just think about that for a second. So just to put this in context, they basically fucked everybody who worked on Green Lantern. And as we go through, I dive more deeply into what they did to Zack Snyder too, where I do agree Zack put up with a lot of shit with the WB, and in general, they're fucking terrible at running stuff. But just imagine that they threw Green Lantern out to the fucking wolves. They shot a role in case somebody on God's green earth loved that movie. They had planned on cutting it loose, saying "fuck you" to everybody who worked on that, and let's just take the actors out, because Ryan Reynolds bounced back from that, thankfully. But just think about, you are working on a project for months or years. There's turmoil on the set. There's shit going down, and then you have the company that's supposed to have your back fucking shoot a cameo where you think you're gonna prop up your movie. They cut it at the end after test screenings. They don't tell you how fucking terrible the test screenings are. They release the movie and then they go, "Oh, no, no, no. We were just joking. That's not our start." And everybody on that production got fucked. Everybody. The fucking craft guy got fucked. Everyone who worked on that movie, their careers were just about fucking done. And and the WB knew. And they could have fucking shelved the movie with a $450 million movie. Just fucking reshoot then. They could have did reshoots and fixed up the scenes people didn't like. But they said, nah, fuck it. We're going to put it out there. This is the product. And that's what I mean when people are like, oh, why are you advocating for James Gunn? Because structure makes movies. Fucking direction, one clear focus. They had Christopher Nolan's Dark Light universe over here. They had this bullshit with Flash and everything else. They hire a great director like George Miller over here. They got fucking Green Lantern over here. And they don't know what to do with anything. And they're just fucking burning money. Throwing fucking money away and burning it. Like, you just fucking throw it in the trash and burn it at this point. Oh, hey, Justin. Justin says they filmed the new Superman movie in a city. The Justice League flag was flying. It was kind of awesome. Yeah, I know. I can't wait for that. Okay, so let me invite Justin. It's not often I can get celebrity guest onto our show, but anyways, yeah, I'm just doing a retrospective of the fall of the DC. I'm gonna be showing this. If you want to add some critiques, I'll send you the link. But as I was saying, this is like the biggest example of burning and wasting money I have ever fucking seen in my life. This is just so fucking ridiculous. And at the time, being one of the biggest DC fans, so in case you guys don't know, by the name, I am a huge DC's fan. I always have been. I've been a huge fan since I watched Superman with Christopher Reeves and Terrence Stamp. I remember watching Superman, and a little sidebar before I get back into the video, but I remember being a kid, and uh, there is something I saw the re-release years later too, but there's something about that scene, and this is what I talk about with good filmmaking: the scene of the sunset and everything. Welcome, Justin Proper. I'm gonna finish my story first before we get into this, but
Go for it.
there's something about when you watch the original Superman. That was my starting point in my journey for DC. I've always been a DC fan in general. One of my favorite superheroes, believe it or not, is John Constantine. I don't know if you call him a superhero, more of an anti-hero, but anyways. But what really got me into DC movies was
Oh,
with
we know about
Christopher.
Constantine. That was an eye opening when you showed me and PB that film. Oh my gosh, the watch party. Oh my goodness, you guys should
Yeah.
check that out. By the way,
Oh yeah, yeah, great promo. And still one of my favorite movies.
yeah,
But
and Keanu Reeves even said, if there's one role he wanted to return to, it would be Constantine. That's what he said on Colbert.
and just everything about that movie is cool. But yeah, let me finish up this story. So,
Go for it.
as a kid, the biggest scene, and you guys in the comments below, let me know what DC movie really, if any, caught your eye. But I remember watching Christopher Reeve's Superman with my father. His first time, he knew I was into superheroes, and he's like, "Son, let me show you a hero movie, right? Let me show you a superhero movie."
And what?
Sorry, I wanted to put your face on there. And
I was like, I was not expecting that. Let me show you a superhero movie. I'm like, Jaws, Halloween. Like, which one of those is a superhero? Well, the shark
no,
is the superhero.
horror movies. My first one was The Blob with Matt Dillon, 1985. That scared the shit out of me. But anyways,
No,
and
mine was Alien because I thought that's how pregnancy worked. So go for it.
but
Finish your
I
story, man.
I remember
Yeah.
the shot when Lewis died, or no, Superman. What
Lois.
was it? No, Lewis died. Superman rewinds time. He stops, and they do that shot where he's looking at the Earth, and you see the sun and everything like that. And filmmaking at that time, this was the most revolutionary thing.
Oh,
And this
doing the
was a
reverse shot of just like
no,
they
no, it's
show the
where he
shot.
flies up in the air, and they do that shot of him just looking at the Earth, and then he flies back, and you got dun 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 dun. Dun, dun, dun. And there's something so inspiring about seeing that moment. It's like a film history, a historic moment where you have some things, some themes that get immortalized. And that is the moment when you realize you're watching something special. And as a youngster watching that I think that's where I truly fell in love with superhero movies as a medium and the potential that they have. Like, this is a hero movie, and it doesn't matter if you're an adult or whatever else. And adults had this view that superhero things were for kids at the time, but this was a
It's not.
movie. but this was a movie that spoke to everybody, no matter their age, no matter if they liked superhero movies or not. And Carmel says something good. He said, "Remember being a kid? You want to say you're grown up now? A lot more than I."
You know, the thing is, you know, we're the same people as we were when we were kids. And by the way, I'm not going to watch an hour long like thing like this. But what I will say is that you know, it's one of those things where we don't really change. We always feel like ourselves as children. We are who we are fundamentally as really young kids, and that's going to be reflective of our adulthood. And we never feel like we actually are adults. We just feel like we just age, you know. And that's the thing. Like we get white hair or gray hair or whatever. It's fine, but we don't change as people. It's just how aging kind of works. And I would say with Superman, that was one of the two things that my grandmother from Grandparents React to Cecil, she said, you need to watch Star Trek. She sat me down and watched that. I didn't really care for it. It's not going to ever be my thing. So sorry, nerds. It's just not going to happen. I'm never going to be a Trekkie. I am a Star Wars fan. I found that first. So there you go. But when it comes to Superman, those films, we borrowed them from like the library or something like that, and the VHSs. And I liked the first two. And even in the second one, it said coming soon, Superman 3 in like the credits. And I was like, ooh, I can't wait for that. And well, it came and went. So
That would be an interesting, maybe another retrospective I'll do for my program is talking about Superman, because
yeah,
God, that's a
yeah.
fascinating history.
Yeah, and
Um,
I remember visiting. I think it was the first movie location that I've ever seen was Niagara Falls, and that was right after, like, around that time, my grandparents decided, hey, we're going to take you on a trip, and we're going to take you to Niagara Falls. It's one of the great wonders of the world, and this is where Superman was filmed, and Christopher Reeve was still alive at the time. It was 2004, so he died later that year. But you know, they tried to explain, you know, the accident and stuff like that, and that he was paralyzed. I was a little too young to understand, but I was very appreciative of that, and I still hold Christopher Reeve in my heart as my Superman. And the new guy, what's his name? Like Devin, like Sweat something, Sweatboard. I don't know. Good luck to the new guy. Yeah. What's that?
Corn Sweat.
Corn Sweat.
Dude, weirdest yet greatest name ever.
He's a studio darling because he's willing to, you know, take a low cut, and that's why he's Superman. That's my theory.
And you know, here's the thing. Uh, a lot of why I'm showing this is I'm giving a history, but I would appreciate, you don't have to watch the whole thing. I'm going to go through the whole entire thing, but I'd appreciate it if you watch some of it, because I find a lot of the stuff interesting. If you don't mind, you could kind of interject certain comments here and there, because I think
Yeah, sure, absolutely. The one thing that I will say about the fall of the DCEU, it had potential, and it could have started with much like the MCU could have started with, you know, Tobey Maguire, you know, and they did try that along the way with Blade, Elektra, and stuff like that. And I just watched Deadpool and Wolverine, and it really it was educational, let me tell you that. And seeing Wesley Snipes again was amazing, and I can understand why you think it's better than the first film. I don't think it's better than the first film, because I think they had less than a filter, less of a filter, but it was still good, and it was still entertaining. It was still on the nose. It was exactly what Marvel needed. And with DC, you know, similarly, you could have had The Dark Knight be the start of this whole DCEU and have Christian Bale as Batman. No need for Batfleck. I mean,
I
God bless
said I
him,
don't think Ben Affleck was a bad Batman. He never got.
no,
to be
he
Batman.
wasn't. He wasn't.
That
But
was my feelings. He never got a chance to have his own movie, and I'm going to get into that portion too. But
oh yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
I passed
But
Christopher
I will.
Nolan.
But
It's interesting because Christopher Nolan straight up said no, just from working with DC on his films and all of the arguments that he had to do, and he only
to get
got
what he wanted.
leeway. Oh yeah, after Dark Knight was when they gave him free reign with all that money that came in. But in the beginning, with the first Batman,
Batman Begins, which I did
uh,
not really
the
hold
concessions
favorably.
that he had to make are pretty well known. Like he went through a lot of shit with that movie. There's a lot of things that are cut and things like that
Yeah,
because of
and
the
just so you
studio.
know, I don't hold that against him necessarily.
Me
I
neither.
do feel
Not at all.
I do feel like it was a studio thing more than anything else, but the end product is the end product, and whether he was satisfied with it, I think it's reflective in the audience because it's. I mean, with me personally, like I saw it, in the summer when it came out, and it didn't really. My opinion is a little bit more jaded because I just saw the Adam West Batman sort of serial, the movie serial that like came in before like the actual movie started, and there was literally like a shark that was biting Batman, and like it was kind of funny, kind of hilarious, but and it was cheesy, it was stupid, but at least there was Robin. We have not seen Robin since Batman and Robin. And that was my only thing. Just like there's no
I
Robin.
can't wait because James Gunn is bringing the whole Bat family.
Well, that's another point that I want to address because a lot of people were complaining because it's going to impede on the Snyderverse, and I don't really care for the Snyderverse. I never cared for the Snyder Cut. I did not give a crap about it, and people were annoying and obnoxious about release the Snyder Cut, and I'm like, ugh. Even streams where when it's like Ryan Kennel and like Lethal Lightning talking about the Snyder Cut, release the Snyder Cut. I was so annoyed by that. But once they got it, I was like, dude, I'm actually happy for you. You got what you wanted. You were so vocal about it, and you got what you wanted. And here it is. And it's still a piece of shit to me. Like it's still messy, but you got what you wanted. That's awesome. But it was. What's weird to me is that the DCEU was so inconsistent. Like you had a bunch of crap films, but then you had something like Shazam, which was like very relatable. It was like
Wonder Woman,
or Wonder Woman. Which, by the way, my father on Father's Day said, I've told this story before, but my father said, for Father's Day, all I want you to do for Father's Day is go see this movie with me. I have waited decades. I've waited like 20, 30 years to see Wonder Woman on the big screen. I wish it was Linda Carter, but here we are. We get a Wonder Woman movie. I've been waiting for this for a long time, and it was a good movie. It was a really good movie, and then they fucked it all up with 1984. They fucked it up by bringing Chris Pine back. Chris Pine Tree. Like, come on. We love Chris Pine. I get it. But it takes away the sacrifice that he made in the first film. So it does not compute with me. The whole, like, using somebody else's body. It just, it just rubs me the wrong way.
I don't want to think about 1984.
Yeah. But the thing is, by the way, nice hat. It suits you well.
Oh, yeah. And I got my Stranger Things shirt to match. But anyways,
well, white trash should not be associated with Stranger Things. Are you kidding me?
But anyways, let me play a little bit more. We're getting to our Lord and Savior, Zack Snyder.
Especially when they realized that Chris Nolan was done with the third entry for The Dark Knight. So if they could put this film out and make sure that the quality was up there, they would then proceed and follow up with a rebooted Batman. Although there were conversations in regards to continuing the Dark Knight trilogy and using Christian Bale's Batman, that was pretty much a non-existent conversation for Chris Nolan, as he told them no. Work on the film really started in 2011, and by then, Zack Snyder hired storyboard artist Jay Oliva, who he cited as somebody that's inspirational for his work and style that mimics Dragon Ball Z, and that's something that Zack Snyder really wanted to capture the feel of in his Superman. Filming of Man of Steel started on August.
And I just want to say something
go ahead.
Like when people give Zack Snyder credit, and this is where I say that's how the Rebel Moon movies are the piles of shit that they are. Yeah, fuck you. I've seen the comments. Fucking Rebel Moon is trash. But anyways,
I just love how they showed an Asian dude and they mentioned Dragon Ball Z. Like,
no, that guy, like, he did some of the.
I thought it just seemed weird to me. But the guy himself, brilliant when it comes to the concept.
And here's the thing. Most people don't realize he made one of the greatest comic stories of all time, and Iggy said it is the Dark Knight Returns, where it is Batman at 60, and he's retired as Batman, and then the criminals start coming back again, and he doesn't want to do it, and he's fighting with himself, and then he comes back when this gang called the Mutants come back, and after he retires as Batman, the Joker goes catatonic and is checked into Arkham. And when Batman returns, an older Joker returns and basically is reserved to kill himself or get Batman to kill him. That's a premise of the story. And that's like the first half. They also have a new Robin in there and Batman versus Superman in a better way. Because, Superman doesn't really age the same. And Superman works for the government, and this is during the Reagan administration. So it's not only is there underlining politics about Reaganomics and shit like that, there's also the question of what happens when superheroes are basically banned and considered vigilantes, and they're legalized by the government, and you have, this fight between Batman and Superman, because Superman basically comes and tells him, like, Bruce, if you do this, I'm going to have to kick the shit out of you. And Bruce Wayne, he's like, good luck. And so he gets warned, and then they have a big fight at the end. It's a great animated series. It's called The Dark Knight Returns Part 1 and 2. It's an animated movie, but it's great. I always wish they adapted it. Zach wanted to, and I kind of would have liked to see his version. But he had that writer helping him write. See, people don't realize Zach is good when he ain't fucking touching the script. He can come up with a good idea, but someone's got to write it because he's a fucking terrible writer. Just god awful. Kind of like M. Night. So, like, they got good concepts, but they can't execute them. So, we'll continue. He got the best Superman to follow up with. This is where we get introduced to Henry Cavill, who at the time, nobody knew who he was.
1st of 2011. The original idea was to shoot it in 3D, but Zack Snyder was not a fan of that. So he opted to rather shoot the film in a standard way and then do a post-conversion, which was one of the biggest negatives at the time with the whole 3D hype following the release of Avatar. We, of course, would get a full cast announcement, or a majority of the cast, in relation to the film prior to the start of filming, which included Henry Cavill as Superman, Amy Adams as Lois Lane, and, of course, General Zod being played by Michael Shannon. In some questionable interviews surrounding the use of Zod, they compared him multiple times to Adolf Hitler, and how
which, no, I don't agree. That Adolf didn't care about the people. Zod did. Fucking hate that comparison, and I hate that the studio encouraged that because Zod was the very opposite of that. He was a soldier that he didn't want to rule. He wanted to right Krypton, and he felt the leadership was doing a piss poor job. He essentially didn't want Krypton. He just wanted to save his planet. But that's neither here nor there.
My question is, Is that for you or is that for the character?
No, the
We
character
all
historically,
we all know your
hero, even
history
in
of
the old
acquiring
one.
people.
Yeah, he's
But,
just a
Of the work
It's
done
fine.
by scientists of the Reich, probably referencing the whole eugenics thing that they did with
Scientists
Man
of
of
the
Steel.
right?
But also, during the development of this film, there was already questions being asked by fans, such as one of the websites that WB set up in relation to Man of Steel, which simply stated, Jesus, the original superhero, and then it linked to some Superman stuff. So people were already getting a little confused. In future interviews in relation to
Yeah, there was this whole weird thing, and I've had this debate with people where Zach, and Zach being Zach, he's been asked questions about this, and Superman is supposed to be a metaphor for Jesus or whatever. And I'm like, this
Yeah.
is the stupid shit I'm talking about when I talk about how I hate, uh, like the different shit that Zack puts out there. And yeah, if you look at his film, there is a shot where he's like this hovering above, and Zack has like directly come out and said that's supposed to be a reference to Jesus or whatever. And it's like, Zack, Superman's not Jesus. He's an alien from another planet. You put an hour fucking intro in your movie with Russell Crowe about him being an alien from another planet. I get the symbolism that people on Earth see him like a Jesus figure or whatever, but it's really on the nose, and that's what I mean with Zack Snyder's writing. He does not have subtlety, and he is very much like up his ass about a lot of stuff. And the more interviews you see and shit like that, I get that feeling. Like, I get it, and he's a creative, and they're all fucking wacky. Hunter Iggy says,
Well,
Zack Snyder's Justice League should be a dark universe, and James Gunn should be bright. Yeah, Zack Snyder wanted to have Batman raped. I'd like to keep that. You guys keep that in mind.
what?
Oh yeah, that was one of his ideas. Thank God, that was one time I agreed with WB. They shot that down. He literally wanted to shoot a scene with Batman in prison being raped. Who the fuck thinks of that? Like, no, I don't want to
Um,
see that in my Batman movie. And these are these crazy fans like justify Zack Snyder's thing. I go, say that scene ever happened. I would love to have an argument with the idiot who defends that. They're just like, no, there's no reason to
where did you
his
hear of
parent.
that?
Oh yeah, it was in a Zack did an interview. He said it himself. That was one of his ideas.
One of James Gunn's ideas.
No, Zack Snyder
His
in the
idea
Snyderverse.
was to have
To have
Batman raped in prison.
Batman imprisoned and raped.
Unless it ends with all of their dicks getting cut off and he wears their dicks as earrings. Like, no, thanks. I'm okay with that. Or their testicles as like earrings. That would be more appropriate. But
Kiefer,
like
I agree.
I would. That's so wrong. It's not even funny. Like
It's
it
just
actually.
weird. It's a weird thing to even say.
Why
Kiefer,
why would you even suggest that? Like whatever character develop. Like no.
how does that?
It's just-
That's the other thing too. You brought up a good point. Like, how does character development like fold into that? Like, I get you want to be dark and gritty, and this is the thing I have an issue with most of Zach's movies. It's just being gritty just to be gritty. There's no substance, or like you said, it's not in service of character development. It's just like, oh, this would be cool.
What about it is in service of character development? I think it's just unnecessary. It just seems like he wants to just destroy a character and put the character in a situation that would honestly never happen, one, and two, it would just make the audience want to throw up. Like, that's like, what is your purpose? Like, do you want to be a horror director? Like, then go and make your zombie movies as much as you want to make them as terrible, like in terms of nitty and gritty and just like and shitty as much as you want. Like what was it? The Day of the Dead or something, whatever.
Army of the Dead.
Army of the Dead, which I thought was related to. I thought it was a sequel to the Ash movies. What are they called?
Oh, we'll get to David Aries' Suicide Squad. They touched that. I think he got fucked. It was very proven that movie got raped as far as because of everything.
Yeah, just like
Once
no
again with
rape
Zack
in
Snyder.
superhero movies. That would be fantastic. Just like no rape in movies. That would be amazing.
That-
I mean, like I get it. You want to like outdo Marvel with because it's under Disney and it's safe, it's family friendly. But then you have Deadpool and Wolverine, and they're willing to go a certain place, but just no cocaine use. Like, okay, fine, that makes sense. Like, it is what it is. You can have violence, and the violence in that movie, honestly, was pretty toned down, all things considered. Like, I would have rated it PG-13
No,
if I.
I'm sorry. We have to disagree there.
I mean,
That's a
I didn't see it on
skin
the big
filled.
screen, like with great quality and stuff like that. But like this, like nowadays, I feel like that would have been like as
Now that's
they
interesting.
wanted it to be as PG-13 as it can get. It's just not going to happen. But I did see that they scaled back on a lot of the violence, and I mean, when you bisect somebody, by the way, I loved the end when they were like, Peter, yay! Like all Deadpool still Peter.
Dude, Peter is an MVP. I love Peter. I count him as a main character. Kiefer says,
with the MCU, yes.
yeah, put him in there. He's a lot better than Happy Hogan.
Peter
We'll
is
get
the
to that
fucking
tier
goat.
list on Wednesday. Anyways, Kiefer says,
Tomorrow.
I, I know Ari wanted Megan Fox as Poison Ivy. I totally buy that for $1. And Eliza Gomez as Catwoman. I would buy that for $2. So, yeah, let's continue because
this film and what we can expect, they never committed to a shared universe, but they sort of hinted at it, saying, well, we'll see what the first film does and how it's received. Majority of the filming outside of the reshoots was done around February of 2012, giving them plenty of time to work on the post-production. And the film would officially see a release in summer of 2013 on June 10th. The film would start off with somewhat mixed reviews, sitting right around a 7 out of 10, and on Rotten Tomatoes around a 73. By the time it was all said and done, on Rotten Tomatoes it sat at a 56, and across the board with reviews about a 5.7. The film drew a lot of criticisms for its dark, brooding, and depressing depiction of the Man of Steel, its excessive use of violence, and of course, the shot where Superman snaps Zod's neck.
Okay, you knew I was going to comment on this. I have a fundamental issue with this, and here is my problem. And jokingly, I would say
based on what he said, what exactly did he say that prompted this?
With one of the controversial decisions of snapping Zod's neck, and I want to comment on that. First
Hey,
off,
by the way, can I rejoin? I don't know how long you're going for, but I have a meeting that I need to get to.
oh yeah,
Zoom.
yeah, you can rejoin. I'll be
Okay.
going for a bit. I'm gonna get through this video.
Oh, okay. All right. Do your thing. Hey guys, we'll see you in a bit. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. So Justin will be back. Anyway, so here's my issue with the whole Zod having his neck snapped, and then I'll address you, Kiefer, because I see your comments. My issue with Zod getting his neck snapped is not an issue that he killed Zod or the method that he killed Zod by. My issue that I have with this scene, if you watch the movie, is that if you look at that scene, the justification for Zod snapping his neck was that he was going to use laser beam and kill the people in the corner. The thing was, Superman had beaten the shit out of Zod and had him to where he could restrain him. And right as he's using his laser beams, he puts his hands over his face and turns his neck. Now, he could have put his hands over his eyes and maybe blinded him or whatever else. But the way Zack tries to shoot it but very poorly conveys, is that there was no other choice to save this family but to fucking kill Zod. And I don't buy it. I've never buy that scene. And that's my one complaint of the whole entire movie, is that the scene is not set up very clearly, and it's not set up well, where I felt like Superman had no other choice but to kill General Zod. Now, it's not to say I think Superman shouldn't kill people. He has. It's not to say that I don't think that you can have that, but I think the way the scene was shot was just poorly conveyed, that message. And I've always had an issue. That's like, I got two issues with that movie: how they killed off Kevin Costner and how they killed General Zod. I think that they were poorly outlined and set up, and I've always had an issue with this. But Kiefer says, I don't think I don't think deep realism suits superhero films. Arkham games are the darkest Batman should go. I do agree with that. One reason I couldn't get into the Dark Knight trilogy is that it didn't feel like a comic. Not a bad film. I don't think you could take a man who dresses in a bat suit too serious. And then he said, I love Batman 89 because they're realistic, but it feels like a comic book. Tim Burton's Batman is my favorite live action depiction, and it kills me that he didn't make more films. Yeah, I'm about 50% on that. I think Dark Knight is great. I do like the realism, but I get what you're saying. I like the Batman by Matt Reeves, and I like the Penguin. I do think you can take realism and apply it to comics. I think it works better for certain heroes than it does for others, and I get what you're saying. Um, I think Logan is a masterpiece, but Wolverine has claws. He should essentially kill people with those. Like, there's always things I've questioned, but I understand where you're coming from too, because I grew up with like the old Batman movies, and I watched the old Superman movies. They're some of my favorites. So I get the battle. I even like the old Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire. I thought those are great. They still had the realism in there, but it felt very comic book, and that's directing style. Once again, that's Sam Raimi. To get back to your Batman, uh, Tim Burton's whimsical outlook on movies fit for me the Batman universe. So yeah, I love the Batman movies, and Michael Keaton is just a fantastic Batman. He'd probably be one of my favorites that we had, if I'm being quite honest. So I get what you're saying. So Heath Ledger's Joker is great, uh, and the Scarecrow was good too. I was kind of mad they didn't give him a better thing. So yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I can definitely see your point of view.
Following year, we would actually see artists and writers from DC Comics tackle this exact issue and sort of poke fun at this film, showing that they did not agree with the decisions made in it. But that did not stop WB or Zack Snyder in their quest to be able to build out a shared universe, as the film did find box office success, making $668 million worldwide on a budget of $260 million. So it was just barely profitable, but it was profitable. Which brings us to the immediate aftermath of the release of the film, where writer David S. Goyer and director Zack Snyder confirmed Man of Steel 2 was in development, and that the film currently was looking at a possible early 2015 release date. A month would go on to the day where then they would be at San Diego Comic-Con and officially announced that the follow-up to Man of Steel would also feature Batman. And this very same announcement was accompanied with the announcement that the sequel was officially called Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. It was also announced that the shooting on Batman v Superman would begin later that year. Zack Snyder also stated that this would not be a direct adaptation of Frank Miller's work, but it would be inspired by it, and that Frank Miller would actually be helping with the script. They started to shoot the film without even having a completed version that November. They shot sequences that we have never seen. All of it ended up being scrapped while they worked out what the film was going to be. At this time, a cast was starting to already be rounded out. We found out that Ben Affleck would be playing Bruce Wayne, aka Batman. Gal Gadot, a relative newcomer, would be playing Wonder Woman in her film debut after WB failed to get the film off the ground for the previous 8 years. And following that, other announcements were made, such as Ezra Miller joining the project as The Flash, Ray Fisher as Cyborg, and of course, Jason Momoa as Aquaman. The production of this.
So to answer your very good question, said Zod. Hunter said Zod. Why didn't Zach just call call Batman versus Superman the movie? I want to say this is a thing to do. They test out titles to see what audiences like. There's a lot of focus groups, and from what I heard, not 100% on it, because at this time you have to remember there was a lot of rumors. I was actually at that Comic Con, and people lost their shit. You got to understand, this was one of the biggest announcements for years. Comic book fans had been asking for Batman versus Superman iteration, and we all thought that was just what the movie was going to be. And he'll get into history and behind the scenes of what happened. But yeah, I agree. The title, actually, I believe the working title was originally just Batman versus Superman. And then they changed it to Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, to incorporate the rest of the Justice League. And as you can see, with this setup, you can already see the problems and the studio interference, because they saw Avengers coming and they wanted to like force the Justice League to be assembled to try to get Justice League's uh, team up before Avengers. And we're going to see, this is well documented. You're going to see the outcome of that terrible, terrible decision. And this is where we talk about the heads of WB. They see Marvel getting that sweet Marvel cash that would later damn near span 20 movies. But what they didn't realize is that while they were having production issues and all of this stuff was going on that I've been chronicling through this, as we get through this video and kind of talking about, Marvel had reset itself years prior and stuck and committed to doing one film at a time, introducing the characters before the team up. You had Iron Man, or actually, you had Hulk introduced in Edward Norton's The Hulk. You had Iron Man come at the end of that movie. You had Iron Man the movie, Captain America, Thor, and then you had the Avengers, and they introduced in between there, amazingly, uh, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow and Hawkeye. So you had uh, not all of the Avengers, but the start. So the first movie was a start. The second movie introduced more people to the group, and then the third Avengers had the full team assembling. That's when you start folding in the Guardians and things like that. They didn't just rush to a team up movie. But DC, instead of doing a Superman movie, a Batman movie, a Flash movie, a Cyborg movie, Aquaman, and Wonder Woman, and then you can throw in characters in between, maybe give Green Lantern a fucking redemption arc. They wanted to just rush and beat Marvel. And that's what it came down to. There was also hype. Like, there's always been a joke about fans, DC versus Marvel. It's been a thing for years, but companies, it's been worse. And DC, after having so many plans just fall through, they wanted to catch up. So that's why you have the situation with the titling of the movie and everything else. It was all rushed. They didn't even have a script. They scrapped probably thousands of dollars worth of shoots just before literally getting a script. They got actors before they even had a script done. And these are the conditions, which is why I say in this rare case, Zack Snyder did have a lot of things he was working against because of how poorly the WB has managed this franchise in general.
This film would see multiple stops and goes, which worried a lot of fans, as multiple times we heard that there was issues on set, that there was issues with production, or that things weren't shaping up to be what fans had hoped. At this time, addressing some of the criticism related to the use of Superman and how he was depicted, director Zack Snyder would say all of that was taken into consideration and that Superman would be a lot more lighthearted and friendly in the upcoming sequel, and that fans should not worry about that, which got a lot of people to get hyped for the project once again. Things were very quiet for a little bit, but of course, we ended up finding out that Jesse Eisenberg was cast as Lex Luthor, which raised more questions than answers. But ever since
This was the worst casting for Lex Luthor in the history of Lex Luthor. I'm going to stop it right here because I've got a lot to say about it. This is one of my main issues with this movie and one of my biggest contentions with this film. Jesse Eisenberg is a phenomenal actor. I have no issue with his acting ability. And I think that in certain roles he fits very well. I think he maybe could have been a good Lex Luthor, but for the universe he was in and the way it wanted it to be shot, this was a fucking terrible casting. At the time, you have to remember too, Smallville was running parallel. They had a great Lex Luthor played by Michael Rosenbaum. He was a phenomenal Lex, and a lot of us fans wanted to see him transition into an actual movie because he would have been a brilliant, complex Lex Luthor. But we got Jesse Eisenberg, and I've seen people defend his performance, and I'm just going to get it out of the way. People can say what they want to. I think he's fucking terrible. He's one of the worst Lex Luthors I've ever seen. He's atrocious. I hate his Lex Luthor. I hate its iteration. I've had tons of arguments, people trying to back it with source material. Look, you could show me as many comics as you want to. I own them. I own a whole compendium of Batman's rogues galleries and shit. Lex Luthor is nothing, absolutely nothing like Jesse Eisenberg portrayed him. I don't know if that's direction or whatever else, but he is the worst iteration to be put on screen. Kevin Spacey did an amazing Lex Luthor. I have no clue, absolutely none, what people were thinking when they casted him. Worst casting choice in that whole entire movie. People say Ben Affleck's Batman was bad. No, Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. I've watched the movie several times, and every time I just can't get over it. He is playing The Social Network. He's not playing Lex Luthor. He's playing a heightened, like angsty teen kind of role, not a tactical genius who is 50 steps ahead of Superman. His plans make no sense, and I might do a review on the movie, but it's the worst part of the film for me. I have to fast forward some of his lines. It's so fucking stupid.
then, we did learn that he was initially auditioning to play the Riddler, who was going to be working with Lex Luthor in this film. But Zack Snyder liked his performance so much that he instead ended up pivoting and making Lex Luthor the sole villain in this. Many people still had many questions and concerns, but we were waiting with bated breath. But before we could even witness a single frame from this film in motion, the announcement was made of a shared universe. At San Diego Comic-Con 2014, 2 years ahead of the release of Batman v Superman, 11 projects were announced to be in development and releasing by 2020. The hype.
So just think, these were supposed to come out like a couple of years ago. So you had Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and some of these did come out, and then some of them just got scrapped. And this is the weird part too, because as I go over this list, you'll kind of see how backwards this was. But you had Man of Steel, and then you had Batman versus Superman, and then the introduction of the Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman after Batman versus Superman, which would be the film before Justice League, because a lot of the slate changed. And then you had Justice League. But here's the thing, you never got the Flash film, and you never got Aquaman or the Cyborg movie before this. So they were going to introduce, I guess, Flash and Cyborg into Justice League, which whatever. And then you have The Flash. You have Batman's own movie, which is completely reversed. Batman's movie should have been before Batman versus Superman. And then you have Shazam, and then you have Justice League Part 2, a Cyborg movie, and another shot at Green Lantern. This is the most disorganized fucking list, and you could tell by the way that this is structured. They had no idea how to put together a connected universe, and they didn't give the directors any say in how to do this. So this comes across as a disorganized mess, an absolute fucking shit show. This list itself looks like a mess.
Was getting unreal. Not only were we getting 3 Justice League films, the likes of Cyborg, Green Lantern, a brand new Batman reboot that would inevitably hit us was among these announcements. But we will talk about those soon because we got to get back to the film and its post-production, which went relatively smoothly with a few reshoots here or there, but nothing really bad made it out there. The first trailer was shown about a year and a half ahead of the film's release, which ended up shifting release dates multiple times, as the competition put a lot of pressure on them. First, Marvel's upcoming Captain America Civil War ended up bumping the film away from a late 2016 release into June, but then the release of Ant-Man 1 ended up bumping the film into March of that year. Finally releasing on March 19th of 2016, the film was not what fans expected. And for that...
And this is the thing I want to highlight here, too. You had... Marvel was on its hot streak. Now, I get the concept of doing going side by side with the different, I guess, companies or whatever else. But not releasing it towards Civil War was actually a smart idea because Civil War fucking crushed the box office. And Ant-Man itself crushed the box office. So I get the decision, but then they wind up coming out, if I remember the dates correctly, a week before the Avengers. And it was definitely not what we fans expected from this movie. And this totally killed whatever momentum that they had. This movie would single-handedly destroy all of the hype that they had built. People were super stoked for this, and my God, this was so disappointing on so many levels. Even the Snyder Cut of Batman v Superman, called the Ultimate Edition, like, yes, it gives better context to the film, but it was still terrible. Bad choices all the way around.
That matter what WB expected, the investors were told the film would make comparable to Avengers money, and they were sold a bill of goods that was estimated to make $1.6 to $2 billion, citing Batman and Superman as heavy hitters and the Avengers as nobodies.
So just think about this. And this is what I'm saying about mismanagement all the way around. And keep in mind, too, this is on Zack's part that a lot of people seem to forget in history. Zack said he was going to make a movie that was going to make $1.2 billion because, hell, the Avengers did it. And he cited the Avengers as nobody, which was just not true given the steady rise of the box office as the Marvel movies came out. The arrogance you have to say that your movie is going to reach $1 billion before you put it out, it's just a failure all the way around. And the execs brought it, so they're just as fucking stupid as the rest of the people involved in this shit show.
The film made $873.6 million on a production budget of $350 plus a marketing budget of close to $450 million, meaning that the film was not profitable. But if the fans liked it, that would be another question. Well, the fans were not so kind, and neither were the critics. The film ended up landing on Rotten Tomatoes with a 29% and an aggregate of a 4 out of 10. With fans, it's up around a 5.2 out of 10. But at this point, the studio was at a point of no return.
And here's the thing that people forget when I argue with them about the Snyderverse, and this is something you have to remember. History does not lie, and this is why I like history. People have argued with me for fucking years on Twitter. I'm sorry, X, okay, about Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut and how it's so much better, and the world's gonna change, and they want to see the Snyderverse. Okay, well, people, you had a chance, okay, and that's how I feel about this. So we could get this out of the way now. I'm not exactly against Snyder's vision or whatever, or a hater. I don't hate his movies. I don't even think he's bad as a director. My issue is I was there at the Comic Cons. I was there for the excitement. I was there opening fucking day for the movie with the hype and people being hyped and slowly it dying as you got to the end of the film. And people didn't like this movie. A lot of people who defend this movie didn't like this movie until you hear the story and he had a tragedy. And look, that's terrible. I'm not going to comment on that and be harsh. You know, the man went through some personal shit and I feel for him in that regard. Like, that's a tough thing. And I get why he had to step away. That was fucking horrible what happened. But that doesn't excuse the fact that this movie had one of the worst endings of a team up movie I had seen in years, and that people did not like this movie. That's a fucking fact. That's an unequivocal fact. And hardcore fans can come out and say, well, I thought it was grilled and it was a brilliant subversion of expectations and this is a darker Batman and it's a grittier world. Bullshit. Then where were all the people who agreed with you? Okay? At the end of the day, it's a movie, and movies have to be marketable. You know what Justice League didn't have over Marvel is that Marvel built good stories, good character and character development, and had good scripts and a plan. DC did not, and that's the fucking facts. And this movie, by essence, it didn't flop as far as lose money, but it damn near broke even. It was not a success. And nobody was fucking defending it until years later. So people who come out and tell me and act like Zack Snyder was the Jesus Christ of DC and that they just cast him aside and no, his movies were heavily divisive from the fucking beginning. He was never this great creator that everyone has hyped him up to be. Okay? So scale your fucking expectations down. Rebel Moon proved it. Okay, he's not good at the scripting stuff. He's got good concepts, he's got good ideas, but he needs writers. And even with a writer, some of the changes that were made, okay, were actually, thank God, from the studio because it was either didn't fit with the movie or it was made too long and it was reasonable. Okay, but he wrote that story, he shot the scenes, he approved the shit that was in it. The stuff that you didn't like, that was Zack. Okay, so I hate when people come at me and go, well, it was a dark version. People couldn't handle it. Bullshit. It was a terrible story. And that's just the facts. That's proven by a mass majority at this point. Like, people can sit here and try to rewrite history in their mind, but it doesn't change what happened. And I was there for it. The whole entire thing.
During the last 3 years of development of Batman v Superman, they were also working on Suicide Squad, which ended up releasing just a handful of months after that film. Suicide Squad was originally announced in 2009, but it never entered production up until September of 2014 after the announcement of the film at San Diego Comic-Con. Director David Ayer would famously go on stage, hold up both middle fingers, and say, F Marvel. and then him and Zack Snyder would proceed to insult various Marvel Studios characters, properties, and the likes of Stan Lee, which was not kindly received.
So just think about this, okay? If you are going to talk shit about a studio, if you are going to put your ass out there, and look, I am not the biggest Marvel fan. I've been a DC fan for majority of my life. But there you have some big old balls to come out and give the middle finger to Marvel and talk shit about proven successful movies when your movie hasn't been released. And this is why I wanted to show this video and do a side-by-side comparison of why this stream is going to be slightly longer. I try to keep these at an hour. This might go over a little 2 hours. But I can't stress enough, and this is why I am behind James Gunn, is these people had the audacity to shit on Marvel when Marvel was winning. They were pulling in big numbers. And you have these two come out like clowns and fucking shit all over Marvel when their movie wasn't even out. And that's why I'm not with the release the Airy cut. Okay, his fucking Joker was terrible. I'm sorry, Jared Leto Joker was not very good. So it baffles my mind going back through the history. And I used to go to Comic Cons and shit. I remember the shit. I was there. Like the hype was great, but at the end of the day, they couldn't deliver on what they were promising, and that's what it comes down to. Nobody delivered on these films, and the ones that they didn't hyped up were the ones that wound up being the best. It's crazy to me. Insult Stan Lee? Yeah, they did that. They really said fuck Stan Lee. I remember very clearly. They got booed on that panel. I will never forget. Like, so see, when people argue with me online, I was there for those events. And I remember the reaction from fans. You have to remember, Comic Cons and shit like that, normies don't go to that, or they take their kids or whatever. You know what I mean? Those are specific fan events. So you had fans genuinely booing Zack Snyder and David Ayer when they got on stage and they said that. I mean, they booed them and they didn't give a fuck. and like and so there's this revisionist history out there that like Zack Snyder was this guy who was just like shunned, but they forget the shit that and the stunts that they pulled in between here. But I remember I was there, and that's why I've always been like, no, what you're saying is rewriting history. This was not good. Hunter says, Zod, what if James Gunn's Superman became the hidden gem 1 year from now? I would be so happy because I think James Gunn approaches things different than Zack Snyder does. And that's just the truth. James Gunn is focused on the fans and focused on storytelling. And that's what I've been saying. You need a story, and you need the fans to back up, and you don't talk shit. You just say, go and watch the movie. And that's what he's been saying. He said, I don't want to say nothing about the film. I don't want to release a fucking trailer. James Gunn is so confident he's going to release his movie after the Comic-Con. And everybody is saying right now how that's a mistake. And I don't think it is. I think James Gunn's got a good product. He's proud of it. He's put work behind it, and he's going to let the film speak for itself. He doesn't have to fucking hype it up. He made fucking Peacekeeper a great character. Who knew the Peacekeeper show would be as big as it is? This is a character no one's ever heard of, and he did the best cast in John Cena, and people fucking love the show. And it's one of the few projects that survived. He saved Suicide Squad with that second movie. That second movie was fucking great. Okay? This man knows how to direct and write a story. And that's the difference, and why I'm highlighting the failure of the DCEU. Because at the end of the day, the sad truth is, Zack doesn't know how to market shit. I'm sorry. He just doesn't. And these directors were arrogant and cocky and overconfident. And they put the cart before the horse. And that's just fucking facts.
Apologies were issued, so that's all in the past. But Suicide Squad would also have all sorts of problems in its own right, from money mismanagement to WB's mishandling of the director, the cast, and the editing, to multiple problems behind the scenes. The cast ended up being pretty decent, all things considered, at the time. Will Smith was hired to play Deadshot. Jared Leto was hired to play the Joker. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, who would be seeing her live-action debut, and multiple other characters to fill out the team. This was supposed to have a major crossover effect with what Zack Snyder was working on with not just Batman v Superman, but also Justice League. But we will talk about that in just a second, because upon the release of David Ayer's Suicide Squad, which was officially released worldwide on August 1st of 2016 on a production budget of $175 million, with a marketing budget estimated to be about $300 million, the film would make $747 million in box office revenue. This was a profitable film. But profits in this case, once again, did not meet quality. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film ended up with a 26%. With audiences, it ended up having a 4 out of 10, and with critics across the board, a 2.8 out of 10. WB had another problem on their hands. And while the merchandise for this film was sky high due to the explosive popularity of Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, the bigger problem that arose was Justice League, which started development during the periods of release before Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice and the release of Suicide Squad. And after the release of both films, there was multiple times they stopped, reworked the entire thing in a reactionary manner, and pivoted hard, which then brings us to talk a little bit more about Suicide Squad. During reshoots, about 2.5 months before the film was out, due to the reaction of Batman v Superman, David Ayer was sent to reshoot parts of the film. What he wasn't told is that they weren't actually intended to use any of this. They ended up hiring a music video studio to recut the film and reassemble the entire thing behind his back, make it more like Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, and put it out.
So, just to make this clear, and I had to let this all play out so you guys have a feel for this. And this is why I kind of am curious to see what David Ayer's original version was. Just imagine you make a movie, and without fucking telling you 2 months, and I mean 2 months before the release, and why the budget actually skyrocketed, which I don't know why their marketing cost is so much more expensive than the actual movie, because this was only $157 million, and the marketing was 300 and something. But anyways, they recut this entire fucking movie. The Joker was actually supposed to be one of the main antagonists, and that crazy witch Enchantress was supposed to be a side plot. But they cut all of Jared Leto's scenes, which I think would have given him more context, which is why I say to this day, I don't have a take on Jared Leto's Joker, because he's not in this fucking movie. They cut like 70% of what Ayer had in the film, reshot it with a different director behind his back, and then released the film. This is a WB thing. That is fucking horrendous. If I was a director, I would not want to work with them. Look, whether or not I agree with a director's vision, and this comes down with my argument with Zack Snyder, is that I may not like the vision, but you should be able to see the artist's intended vision if you hire them there and you're telling me this is the person's film I'm seeing. If you're using a different director and you're cutting a good third or fourth of the film, then I'm not seeing the director's original vision. I'm not seeing what he had intended me to see. And that's just bullshit. And I do agree, David Ayer got fucked on this, because this is pure, unadulterated studio interference. Look, I'm not saying the original version would have been much different than what we got, but when you've cut 70% of the film and spliced it in such a way, then yeah, he has a legitimate point, and he should have sued them, because that was terrible. It was just awful. That's like, any creative shouldn't have their work cut down like that. That's god awful. like 70% of your film just on the cutting room floor. Who gives a shit? You paid a director basically just to look good. It's atrocious.
Would also end up happening during the production of Justice League, where the studio kept meddling with the film. And now there was already a precedent for them to keep doing this. But once again, we're going to get back to Justice League in just a little bit, because the next film that was already in development was 2017's Wonder Woman. Directed by Patty Jenkins, starring Gal Gadot, who previously appeared as Wonder Woman in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice.
Dude, when they gave Patty Jenkins did a great job with the original Wonder Woman, but when they gave her creative freedom on 1984, that was the worst mistake ever. This bitch does not know how to cut stuff herself, and I'm sorry, Wonder Woman in 1984 was an abomination.
Film entered development officially in November of 2015. Many of the ideas that Zack Snyder came up with ended up being scrapped, and we would see evidence of this far later in the DCEU's lifespan. The film would shoot during the same time that the release of Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad was happening, and they realized they needed to fix a couple of problems. So mandatory reshoots were ordered for Wonder Woman, which would change the complete third act of the film. Or should I say, add a third act to the film. Originally, the ending was supposed to be set right after the No Man's Land sequence, and there was no use of Ares. This was only after Patty Jenkins convinced WB to keep the No Man's Land scene in because they wanted it removed and just an action sequence. They made compromises and then shot a complete different ending and third act with a twist involving Ares. So an entire third act was added, which many people believe might have ruined the film. Some say it made it stronger. Whatever the case is, Wonder Woman ended up being the smoothest project they put out. With a budget of $150 million, it made $824 million. The audiences responded well to it, and it has an 8.2 out of 10. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 93. And to this day is one of the highest reviewed DC films of all time. With Wonder Woman being a huge success, all eyes were now on Justice League, which had a release date set for 2017. This was Zack Snyder's third film. Written by Chris Terrio, all eyes were on this one because they were hoping to capture that Marvel lightning in a bottle. By the release of Wonder Woman, the film had already gone through 2 rounds of reshoots, and more problems started to arise, such as reports that test screenings were absolutely abysmal and people were not enjoying the cuts of the films that they were seeing. According to reports that were verified, at least 4 different versions were screened, none that tested overly positively. And major criticism was tossed at Zack Snyder and his use, once again, of Superman, when he failed to address the dark, gloomy, now dubbed Murder Man version of Superman in the previous entry, aka BVS. People were not high on him directing this film. And that's when one of the biggest, most shocking moments in the development.
And before I get into this, I just want to say, for everybody who's a staunch Snyder defender, people did not like Zack Snyder's version of Superman or a lot of the tones and things in the other films, which mystifies my mind how people defend this. Like, this is just like, look, I get it. There's a lot of fan input, but even fans were divided in the DC fandom for years over Snyder. Like, to this day, people are still divided right down the middle about Snyder's work, and that's the fan base. Normal moviegoers, the people who don't give a shit about the lore and aren't nerds like us, were like, what the fuck? This is not the Superman I grew up with. Marvel succeeded because they appeal to the people. Yes, you can do fan movies. It's been proven it can be successful, but it's how you do it. You can't fundamentally change a character and make him dark and brooding when you have a character that's dark and brooding. He's called Batman. You can't have two Batmans. Superman's not Batman. You need the light and the dark side. And Zack was all dark. And that's just the matter. Like, no matter how hard they tried, and it's nothing to do with Henry Cavill's performance, it's the character development itself. People didn't want Zack Snyder to do a Justice League. And a lot of people forget this for some fucking reason. Here we are in 2024, and it's as if people choose to remember these events differently, which is why I'm going over this video today, because I like to drive home the point. Like, people seem to rewrite in their mind how these things went down. But this is the facts. This is the stuff that was happening. This is why the DC needed a completely overhaul. That's why I said scrap it all. That's why I'm with James Gunn. Like, yeah, he got rid of Gal Gadot and Henry Cavill, but look at why. Because James Gunn wants to start brand new on a clean slate with people seeing his vision and not tied to this fucking Snyder universe and all the bullshit that came before. And people forget all of this bullshit that happened before. I remember, I've seen every one of these movies in the theater. I remember my feelings and reactions, and I might do a tier ranking and a listing of these movies because I've revisited them recently. But people just need to realize, like, this is the facts. These movies were not doing good. And remembering them different is just trying to cope, okay? The facts were Marvel was killing it, and that's just the truth. That's by the box office numbers, that's by the fan reaction, that's by the reception. Hell, there's DC fans who watched Marvel movies. So, trying to remember it like Zack Snyder was fucked over, that's not exactly the truth. A lot of people didn't like Zack Snyder's movies at the time.
And the history of the DCEU happened. Zack Snyder was fired by WB, and they hired Joss Whedon, who of course previously helmed Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron.
And I'd like to add in too with that, I don't know if he's going to go over it because I'm watching this video with you guys as I'm commenting and giving my own critique. But keep in mind, Zack Snyder had a tragedy. He had someone in their life commit offing themselves, permanently taking themselves out or whatever is safe for the algorithm. And it was a tragedy. And then on top of that, they fired Zack Snyder. So this is the part that people seem to focus in on, and I agree to a certain extent with this. But you also have to remember, a lot of his movies either broke even or weren't very successful. So from WB's perspective, this was a business standard. Now, where I don't agree and where things went terribly wrong was with Joss Whedon. And you have to remember, at the time, I was okay with this decision because I'm a fan of Buffy and Firefly. But here's the issue we're going to run into. Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder have two very different tones in movies. And Joss Whedon's movie is not very good because there's very conflicting tones where they spliced the movie and kept some stuff from Zack Snyder and then did reshoots and added some stuff with Joss Whedon. Because not that it made the movie better or it was the director to choose, but because they wanted to copy Marvel. That's what it came down to. And when you try to copy somebody else's style after you've basically already set your tone for your universe, that's where you run into the issues that are coming up later. And essentially why you need someone like James Gunn. Because of the fact that at this point, WB was already down this road. They did not know where to go, and they were just making poor choices all the way around. Joss Whedon did Justice League cartoon and a live action. Yeah, I do agree. And it was just wrong. It was a bad tone shift. And then stuff would come out about Joss Whedon. So he got along with nobody on set.
They wanted the Avengers, and they were going to get the Avengers. Joss Whedon and Jeff Johns would do quick rewrites, and the film went through another 2.5 months of massive reshoots. This was only 4 months from the release date, but they decided not to budge at all and stick to the November release date of 2017. With the original production budget of $300 million and then an estimated $150 to $200 million used on multiple reshoots.
So you're talking about right now the budget for this movie is almost 600 million or so, with a 150 to 200 million dollar reshoot. This is the biggest blunder WB did. Justice League was the most mishandled movie in the history of the DCEU. Josh Whedon should get another chance. No, I disagree. I totally 1000% disagree. Josh Whedon is good at Marvel because of its tone. He does not fit DC. And you'll hear about the things, but he was very, very terrible to the cast and crew. No one on set liked him. And I'll give Zach one thing. He's very good with his actors. Josh Whedon is a terrible person. You can look up stuff. I thought about bringing it up on my thing, but he has there's some things on Buffy, and if you guys get a chance, go check that out. One of my favorite actors on there, James Maston. He plays Spike. He came out and did an interview, and there were accusations of him verbally abusing women on the set of that. There's some stories about him behind the scenes on the Justice League. He had a lot of fights. There's even some hints of racism as far as him and the person who plays Cyborg. In general, he's not a very good person. And he has hurt a lot of the productions that he's been on. And I hate to say that because I do like Josh Whedon's work, but it's just the facts. Like, there's a scene in Buffy where Spike essentially grapes her. I can't say it on YouTube. It's in season 6 of Buffy. And that scene, neither of the actors wanted to shoot, and he still shot it anyways. And it's a very intense scene for television. And so there's a lot of questionable choices Josh Whedon made. So yeah, James Masters. I agree. And it was, thank you. It was season 7. I wasn't sure if it was 6 or 7. It was season 7, and yeah. And on top of that, during Angel, Charisma Carpenter got pregnant, and he basically belittled her and made fun of her on set. He called her fat and all this stuff. He said she ruined the season, and then he killed her off in that season. Well, he put her in a coma, and they killed her character off very unceremoniously. And that's just one of 1,000 things that Josh Whedon is accused of that I believe are true, because it's not just one person saying it. There's several Buffy cast members that have come out. There's actually a great documentary on it. Sarah Michelle Gellar came out and defended Charisma Carpenter. The person who plays, or a lot of the people who play the Scooby Gang, the dude who, Anthony Head, who plays Giles, also came out and said some things. They were under an NDA, and then after that passed, a bunch of shit came out about the whole production of that show. And yeah, Josh Whedon's not a good guy. And when he came on Justice League, he started a lot of shit with all of the actors. They were not happy at all. So yeah, there's a
And
reason why
another
he's not in
300
Marvel
million
anymore.
on marketing. The film is one of the most expensive of all time. And since the budget was never confirmed by WB, we will never truly know. But it's safe to say that the film did not deliver. As in its box office take, it made $661.3 million. The film ended up having a Rotten Tomatoes score of a 39, an audience score of 2, and is generally seen as one of the worst films in the DCEU, with clashing directors' visions, scenes that don't make sense or flow, nonsensical moments, and a Frankenstein butchering of 2 different directors' visions clearly clashed against what either director wanted to make. But it doesn't end here, as there's multiple other stories revolving around this. The first one I'm going to cover right now is what happened backstage during the production of the film after Joss Whedon took over. Reportedly, him and Jeff Johns ran rampant on set, pulling rank, having unlimited power, and more or less controlling everybody and belittling everybody to the point that nobody wanted to be there. Verbal abuse against Joss Whedon and allegations quickly hit the net after the release of the film, many of these further being verified. Then we got reports about specific things related to racial discrimination involving Jeff Johns. Joss Whedon was outed during the Me Too movement. Joss Whedon's ex-wife also jumped on this and exposed him for various things. And then we started to hear that all the actors involved with the reshoots were pretty much there because they had to be. Henry Cavill was mentally already checked out and moving to other franchises. Gal Gadot wanted nothing to do with this. Ray Fisher and Ezra Miller were apparently heavily discriminated against, especially Ray Fisher, who says that all of his scenes were cut because Joss Whedon was racist. The then CEO of the company, Kevin Tujihara, was put on blast. Even though he was replaced by Walter Hamada during a transitional period, Ray Fisher would go heavily after Walter Hamada, claiming that the man is an outright racist, sexist, and accusing him of doing and saying various things. To make matters even worse for WB and DC, the long rumored to be in development film The Batman, which was going to be directed by Ben Affleck during the production of Justice League, ended up becoming more real as Ben Affleck posted pictures and videos of Deathstroke, played by Joe Manganiello, and then we quickly found out that a film based on Long Halloween was in development starring Ben Affleck, where across one night he would be fighting all sorts of villains from his rogues gallery, and the one that was going to be the biggest problem was going to be Deathstroke. Almost a year went by without a single update on this film, and then we found out that director Ben Affleck had left the project, but he was still attached to play Batman. The project would then shift to be directed by Matt Reeves, and in the press release, there was no mention.
So here's the thing that most people don't know. And Matt Reeves actually came back to do The Batman with um, Robert Pattinson, which would be a success. But Ben Affleck, and this is why I say I don't have a problem with Ben Affleck's Batman, is because we never got to see it. He had this great idea for it, and I remember the pictures for Deathstroke and everything else and being excited. And once again, one of the worst people to ever head DC, Walter Hamada, um, basically scrapped the whole project. They started making a hard pivot, thinking that uh, everything to do with Snyder and the dark tones and everything, they were the problem. And the issue was it wasn't. It was not letting creatives be creative and do their own vision. But then they just doubled down on strangling all of the creativity out of the DCEU. And this is why I'm an advocate for Gunn. Like, this is just like mismanaged all the way around. And the change thankfully didn't happen until they got rid of Hamada and half of the people who worked for DC at this time. It's just terrible, terrible mismanagement all the way around.
Of Ben Affleck. Many people speculated that he was still on and that this was a DCEU film. We here at CBC covered it extensively, saying if it's not in the press release, it's going to be a reboot. Some time went by and we officially found out that the upcoming The Batman was officially a complete reboot of the character, not connected to the DCEU at all. We then found out about Robert Pattinson, but that's not for this video, that's for elsewhere. And years later, we would also learn from actor Joe Manganiello, who was set to play Deathstroke in Ben Affleck's version, that there was actually an active in development Deathstroke standalone origin story that was going to be produced for about $50 million. But various peoples involved with different factions of WB and DC were pulling rank and trying to screw over one another. So ultimately, what we ended up getting was a Deathstroke on Titans. And the Deathstroke.
So this is kind of what is happening with Star Wars right now. That's happening over on the Disney end. There are several people in power. They were all vying for who was going to be the best. And the sad part is the directors and the creatives were getting fucked over along with the actors. So you had two different factions. You had what was left of Hamada and his little regime, and you had new people coming in to take over. And this is why when people bitched about James Gunn cleaning house, James Gunn got rid of all of the elements of the previous DC. Walter Hamada moved on. Jeff Johns and the rest of the people who were behind this shitty universe, all of the writers and directors that were battling with each other and trying to one up each other, he cleaned house. And people said, "What is James Gunn doing? Oh my God, he got rid of Gal Gadot. He got rid of Henry Cavill. This is ludicrous." No, he was getting rid of the shit that was the stain on everybody's boot from the previous regime. Okay, people were battling and fucking each over and destroying projects on purpose to one up each other. I mean, this is the shit that people don't know about, and why I'm doing this to illuminate some things when people talk shit about James Gunn online before a fucking movie has been released and we've seen anything from his version of the DCU. You have to understand, everything that was going on in the WB was complete anarchy and chaos, and that's why you have 50 different things now out and none of them connected. And James Gunn came out and he made everything clear. Batman's over here, Todd Phillips's Joker is over here, his universe is here. And eventually they're going to kind of connect with each other, but he wants to start with coherent storytelling. And you know what? Seeing all of this, it should illuminate why the choices were made that were made. DC needed to be gutted and restaffed and reined in into one vision, one common goal, and one common direction that gives people good products. Because at the end of the day, this is a market, and this is about giving the people what they want to see. And you can't have a clear vision when you have 15 people fighting for power of one franchise. So yeah, all of these projects were a shit show. It was a joke.
Film was officially killed off, but things were looking a little better on other projects for the DCEU. James Wan was hired to direct Aquaman starring Jason Momoa. This was relatively one of the smoothest productions that DC has ever had. Jason was back as Aquaman, Amber Heard returned from previous films as Mera, and they went out there and tried to do exactly what the comics did, which is give people an experience unlike anything that they've seen before. James Wan largely wanted to set this film on its own apart from everything else. He was not really interested in connecting to the bigger plots elsewhere, building out of what came before, and this shows in the final cut of the film, as there are slight retcons and outright just ignoring situations from Zack Snyder's work. Produced on a budget of $200 million, the film would go on and make $1.15 billion, becoming WB's biggest film of all time at the time, validating me as an Aquaman bro, one of the OGs from the 90s, as somebody who's been saying, yeah, Aquaman can be a billion-dollar franchise, trust me, bro. And here it was. And while I don't think it's a great film per se, I do think it's good, entertaining, fun, and captures the spirit of Aquaman. And clearly, the audiences agreed. The film does have an overall positive with a 66 on Rotten Tomatoes. When it comes to fan reviews, it sits at a 6.9. And WB was really happy with its results. So it's not surprising that a sequel was announced very quickly afterwards. Now, during the later half of the development of Aquaman, WB finally entered development of their long gestating Shazam, which originally started as a Shazam versus Black Adam project in 2007 when Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was announced to play Black Adam in the film. Yes, in 2007. We'll get back to this, trust me.
Yeah, this Rock thing would later come out, and there's a lot of other behind the scenes stuff that they're gonna talk about here. But this is where the DCU officially died. The Rock helped kill that, so thank you, Dwayne Johnson. But yeah, they'll get back to that. But my thoughts on it, like Shazam was a surprise. It was a surprise hit, and then I'm sure they'll get into that. But Shazam came out of left field as well, so it looked like for a lot of DC fans we were on track. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Aquaman movie myself, uh, you have to remember it made $1 billion. It was the first thing DC released that came close to touching what Marvel had. And here's the thing, they didn't interfere with that project. And that's the big key. They let the creators be creative and they got a good product.
WB decided to hire a relative nobody when it came to big blockbuster films. David F. Sandberg was officially hired to direct Shazam, even though he was mostly known for horror work. We quickly found out that The Rock's Black Adam would not be the villain of this film, that was intended to be something that they build up towards, and that Zachary Levi was cast as Shazam, while Asher Angel was cast as Billy Batson, the 14-year-old alter ego of Shazam. Mark Strong joined as Dr. Silva, and this film has a relatively safe and good development. There wasn't massive problems behind the scenes. There wasn't massive interference from WB. Everybody seemed to be happy. Everybody was on cloud nine. And when the film released, this showed. With a production budget of $100 million, it made $367.7 million, making it another profitable film for the studio. The film ended up with a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes and 8.2 among fans, and is seen as one of the best DC films of all time, capturing the spirit of the old Shazam comics to perfection. Now, while everything was good on the film front, there was already problems with DC and WB on the TV side of things, as it was just a few years prior to this. In 2017, it was announced that the DC universe would be expanding with original live action content, all set in a shared universe.
And this is an issue that would come up later, and I wanted to comment on this. I actually had a subscription to DC Universe. I watched all of the programs. I'm not as hard on Titan as other people. I thought Swamp Thing was amazing and was canceled way before its time. Harley Quinn is still going strong, and then they as they do, they mismanage everything about this. This was supposed to be a platform where you could get the old comic books, the new runs. You could literally buy comics as they were coming out digitally. This could have changed the landscape of how you interact with media while having original programming and being something completely new. And once again, WB totally fucked this up. The real villains here is the WB. Like the real Apocalypse is WB. They have been the worst with this property. Just absolutely. I often wonder what would happen if Kevin or somebody who gives a shit about comic books and things got a hold of this. We'd probably be in a whole different alternate timeline where DC was actually the best.
Among the projects that were announced was Teen Titans, a Lois Lane and Lex Luthor TV series, Swamp Thing, Doom Patrol, Stargirl, Justice Society of America, and various other projects that
I know Doom Patrol happened, Stargirl happened. They were both pretty good, actually. Stargirl wind up living a little bit on the CW and went fucking downhill because CW sucks. Doom Patrol wind up moving to Max and had an abysmal second to third season. And it started out so good. The first season is amazing. Yeah, this is another shit show.
never saw the light of day. And at this time, the development of the TV series Krypton was also happening. This was at one point intended to be a prequel to Man of Steel, but that was ultimately scrapped as nobody wanted to touch that, it seems, and Universal, which owned that series on Sci-Fi, was not interested in that. All of these series and the DC Universe would end up being scrapped as a whole within 3 years. Some projects would live on other streaming services, others would go to the WB owned CW, which ultimately found its end by 2023. And the reason
So keep in mind, some of the projects and the biggest mind-boggling decisions. Swamp Thing was an R-rated show that the CW gutted in a censored version. Stargirl was already kind of censored-ish, and they just cut out certain things from the first season of Stargirl, and then the third was just terrible. The quality dropped because CW doesn't know how to do it. Superman and Lois was developed for DC Universe, but wound up being co-owned by HBO, which is why it's so good. And I'm going to cover the final season, but that's why the CW, even though they showed it, it seemed more high quality. It's because the CW didn't fund that show. They just had the viewer rights to show it, but they didn't have any creative hand in that. And that's why you notice the quality of Superman and Lois is better than most CW shows. It's because they don't produce it. HBO Max produces that show. So, uh, and of course, Doom Patrol could never go on the CW, so they moved that over to HBO Max along with Titans and Titans and Harley Quinn. Titans got canceled. Doom Patrol got canceled. Harley Quinn is still going and has a spin-off called the Kite Man. So you could see kind of what started happening here, and the universe is starting to implode.
And that this was important to talk about is because during the time of the development of the DCEU to get to this point, WB was already shared by two different owners with different people coming in, replacing CEOs and executives and calling different shots.
And I want to bring up a good point that Killy Chow says here. Killy Chow says the WB and UPN are rolling in their graves because of the CW. I 100% agree with that. It says Buffy versus Arrowverse, yeah. I'd say the Arrowverse started out good, Keely, but the problem is they never changed, and then politics. This is a pure example of politics got in the way of a lot of CW shows, and just fucking sunk that network into the ground. And the CW has for years pandered to a teenage girl guy, because this isn't just girls either, like that Dawson's Creek, that kind of an era, and they didn't want to evolve with the times. So everything that got put onto there was a shit show. Now, with the Arrowverse was an exception because before all of these came out and the MCU showed that you could have high quality superhero movies, we hadn't gotten anything from or from TV quite like the Arrowverse. So when Arrow first came out and the Flash and all that, it was new and exciting. But then once Netflix put out their version with the Defenders and Jessica Jones and Daredevil and all that, and you could see that these could be gritty, the CW became obsolete. And they didn't change. They just kept on putting out the same shit. And that's comment that, like, literally the worst compliment you could give a show is saying it's like a CW show, because their writing just fucking sucks and they didn't want to pay for anything, and the productions got cheaper and cheaper. They started fucking over all the actors, and the sets were dangerous and things like that. And they folded recently. And Stargirl was actually really good.
So every time they were seen to be gaining steam, there was always a minor setback. And speaking of minor setbacks, let's
More
get
action,
to
less feelings. I
2020.
agree.
Just about a year after the release of Shazam was the next big theatrical release, which was supposed to be called Birds of Prey, but then it was retitled to Birds of Prey and the Fabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn.
This is the worst title in the history of titles. And now, look, I want to just say I saw Birds of Prey in the theater. I don't think Birds of Prey is as bad as people shit on, but DC was lost at this time, and that title is fucking ridiculous. The Birds of Prey, uh, the Fabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. Like, look, I would have been just happy, and Bitchy saw this one too. She likes a lot of scenes from this movie, and I tend to agree with one thing, and how she phrases it. Like, if you just take Harley Quinn's role in this movie, it's actually a really good movie. If we would have just got a fucking Harley Quinn movie instead of the rest of the plot, and still kept in Ian McGregor as Black Mask, because I don't care what anybody says, he was fucking fantastic in that role. If you would have just had Black Mask versus Harley Quinn, that would have been a great movie. But once again, here comes WB fucking it up. You got to throw in Montoya and all these fucking stupid characters I don't care about, except for Huntress. I love what's her name who plays Huntress. They'll probably say her name. She's just fucking a really hilarious character. But the problem is you had 5 characters and none of them get backstory. They get these stupid little like introductions and then that's fucking it. And then we assemble and you expect people to care about it, especially with the statements that were said during the release of the movie from the director about how this is going to battle misogyny and all that bullshit because we were in the height of that dumb shit. And so this movie did terrible because nobody wanted to see a movie that called them a piece of shit and insulted the audience. And that's just the facts. And I still watched the movie and I didn't think it was as bad as people said. I think it deserves a lot more credit it was given, but I do see people's complaints. It's too cluttered. The story is unfocused. And it really should have been a Harley Quinn movie because Margot Robbie has always been good as Harley Quinn. That's just a fact. She made that character popular.
This title change was made due to the fact that WB did not believe that Birds of Prey could live on its own as a brand, so they wanted to stick Harley Quinn's name on there. At one point, they were even just going to call it Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. The film, much like Shazam, had a pretty smooth development, all things considered. With a budget of $90 million, the film, unfortunately, only ended up making $205 million. But that's not really the big story here, as no films in the next couple of years would make massive amounts of money, as this was the unfortunate film to release right as the pandemic hit the world. Global shutdowns, theaters were closed, people were.
And I'm gonna stop right here. Um, there's a theory about the pandemic. I think it affected some of the movies, but I'm gonna say this movie was already fucked before it came out. I hate when people use the excuse, the pandemic. No, the pandemic, we've proven some movies did successfully during the pandemic, some movies didn't. And then some streaming services made the choice of doing streaming the movie before they released it, and it affected the box office. So I don't buy into this bullshit that it was just a pandemic that killed some of these films. No, it was shitty scripts, terrible stories, and people didn't want to see it. And they weren't going to go and risk it over a movie that was going to be shit. So, yeah, maybe people didn't want to go out and risk getting sick to go just to go see a movie they weren't going to like. That's a big factor. But people weren't making movies that people wanted to drive to see. And on top of that, the movie industry hasn't recovered because it's exposed one simple fact. Movie theaters were in decline before this, and theaters weren't putting out things people want to see. Look at the box office now and how uneven all of these movies are. Just right now, Deadpool Wolverine is about to hit $1 billion. You want to know why? Because it's fucking entertaining and people want to see it. It has nothing to do with a pandemic or this or that, or it's releasing side by side on streaming. It has nothing to do with none of that bullshit. At the end of the day, it comes down to quality. If you're not producing quality, then people don't want to go and see it. It doesn't fucking matter if it's a sunny day, if there's a fucking worldwide disaster or whatever else. People will still go out and make the effort to see something if they really want to get there. I have driven to different places to go and see a movie that's 3 hours out of my way because I heard it was good, and sometimes I was right, sometimes I was wrong. I went to see Inception in a theater that was 3 hours from my house because wanted to fucking see it. It grabbed me and it looked good, and I don't regret it. And I've seen the movie 5 more times after that. You want to know why? Because Inception's a fucking amazing film, and it was worth the drive, it was worth owning it, and it was worth seeing it. So this bullshit that people comes up with, oh, it's this, it's that. No, you just don't put out good movies. And people now don't have the money to spend on shit. So they're not going to go out of their way to see something if they don't deem it's worth it, especially in the economy we have now. And that's just a fucking fact. And theaters and everything are going to suffer in Hollywood until they figure out that you need to change the way you're doing things and stop spending fucking $300 million on projects. There's movies that are coming out made for 10 million, 20 million that are doing triple their budgets because they're quality, they're focused, and people want to see it. And that's what it comes down to. It's a consumer market. And yeah, the pandemic did tank a lot of projects and shows, things that weren't even started. I do believe that because they couldn't shoot in the locations. So logistically, some things did get messed up. The James Bond movie had a bad delay and things like that. That I understand. But Birds of Prey was in production since fucking 2011. So you can't tell me when it comes out during the pandemic that the pandemic directly affected the movie. That's horseshit. It was word of mouth and the promotion behind it. No one wanted to fucking see the movie. So of course they're not going to go during a pandemic or risk their health to see a movie that they're not going to like. That's just fucking common sense, which is why I don't get this excuse. And like now we're past the pandemic and I'm still hearing stupid shit like, "Oh, since the pandemic, the market's never recovered. So we just had so much problems." No, you made a fucking pile of shit nobody wanted to see, and that's why your movie's not doing well. Don't fucking blame it on the pandemic or this or that. Just make a good movie. People will watch it. It's that simple. Hunter said, Zod, should Rose Montoya return in the DCU Batman? I don't know. If they do a good version, maybe. I'll be honest with you, I really never liked the way they characterized her. I think she could be a good character, but I think, like everything else, it needs to be redone.
Told to stay indoors, and well, people were not going out and seeing Birds of Prey. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a 78%. The audiences give it an 8.1, and it's generally seen as a very enjoyable film. To this date, this is actually my favorite project in the DCEU. The star-studded cast, which of course includes Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, also included Ewan McGregor as Sionis, aka Black Mask. And the film has a completely different vibe than almost anything else in the DCEU, and it really shows. Now, as the pandemic continued to have its effects on the world, WB did not budge from the release date that they set earlier that summer for the release of Wonder Woman 1984, which
Now, this, I believe, was WB's fault because the dates is one thing that the company controls, and the WB, unlike Marvel and the rest of the studios, once again making a complete and wrong move, said, fuck it, we're going to fucking put these movies out because we're not going to let them sit. And if you spend $300 million or $200 million or $150 million on a project and you're confident in it, then you should push back the dates to when people can go and see it. Wonder Woman 84 was fucking terrible, but I do agree that the release date was not very good as well. And they also streamed it side by side. So that box office is just by the numbers is proven that really hurt the film. But Patty Jenkins' writing was fucking terrible in that movie. Like, I could make a whole critique on that movie alone. It was a god awful movie. They kill Chris Pine at the end, but they bring him back in somebody else's body. And this is just a sidebar. This is something that's pissed me off about the movie that no one addresses to this day. Gal Gadot fucks somebody else with Chris Pine in their body, essentially raped them. And nobody mentions this in the movie. And the dude factually does not remember anything from when Chris Pine took over his body. It's the weirdest fucking plot in the movie. And if this was reversed and it was a guy who did that and Wonder Woman was in somebody else's body, the shitstorm that would have been around this movie would have been astronomical. But because it was Gal Gadot, who, let's be real, I don't think any guy would really complain being with Gal Gadot. Because it was Gal Gadot and the plots were reversed and it was a guy stealing another guy's body, it's okay. I think that if we're going to talk about this whole the mistreatment of women and things like that, then this is a fucked up reversed 3D chess game we have going on where you essentially have this innocent guy who, by the way, is married with a wife and kids when Chris Pine takes over his body. And they like show it in the movie. They like do a cutaway because it's PG-13, but they show she sleeps with this guy several times. And basically, they just said all this stuff to catching up like the good old days. And it's weird. It's such a weird plot point. and nobody at the fucking studio thought that there was anything wrong with this. That's just one of many complaints I have about this movie. And so it's like I said, it's not just the pandemic. The choices made in this film are fucking odd. I do not understand. I did like the 80s aesthetic though.
Which was a sequel to the original Wonder Woman, which saw multiple problems during development. From what we understand, Patty Jenkins was already paid pretty highly for this film, and she was given free reins. Sort of
Which
like
was
the
the worst
Tim Burton
mistake ever.
Batman Returns effect and the Chris Nolan Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises effect. She essentially made the first film such a big hit, they told her, do whatever.
I don't want to hide from them anymore.
Oh God, I
What
hate
do
when
we
they
do?
do this.
Are we not men?
Sorry about that. Hate when they do.
You won't. And that's exactly what she did. With a production budget of $200 million, the film would manage to find a way to bring Chris Pine back, who died off in the first film, include Pedro Pascal as a makeshift DCU version of Donald Trump, aka DC Comics' Maxwell Lord, and the controversial decision to cast the phenomenal Kristen Wiig as Cheetah, who was going to look like a member of the Cats musical. The film also ended up going through a rough round of reshoots after some test screenings were received so negatively that WB was considering largely trying to shift the film away from what it was before and trying to.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Thank you. Hunter says Zod. I think that is her husband at the end of the movie, and the other guy's body. Yeah. Either way, the plot is weird. I don't like the plot of the body swapping. It's very, I hate to use this word, but it is really problematic. Just the whole.
To maybe reshoot, according to reports, half of it. But this wasn't going to happen during the pandemic. So the film did officially release as a hybrid in theaters and on Max/HBO Max. The film would go on and make $169.6 million, becoming a major box office failure. To make matters even worse, due to the agreement for the film going on Max, Gal Gadot and the director were both reportedly paid upwards of $50 million apiece for this decision.
So this was when Max was streaming stuff, and I just want to say, I agree with Scarlett Johansson when she sued Disney because they weren't going to pay her for doing the streaming, and it didn't get released in theaters. It got released to streaming. That was a whole big thing. But here's the thing, and once again, this is why James Gunn cleaned house. Patty Jenkins got paid $50 million for streaming it on Max. Gal Gadot got paid $50 million, and the movie bombed essentially and only did $130 million, and we don't have streaming numbers, so we don't know how successful it was on Max. So virtually this movie on every metric lost a shit ton of money. And so this is why I was saying, yeah, get rid of them. That's why James Gunn got rid of Patty Jenkins. She wanted more money. This chick got essentially whatever she got paid up front for her fee, plus an extra $50 million for one of the biggest DC bombs to come out. I mean, this movie flopped harder than Justice League or any of the other movies. This movie is like, in terms of failure, it's on the same level of Green Lantern. Just think about that. And then people were shocked that James Gunn fired Patty Jenkins. No, I'm glad. Good, get her the hell out of here. That's ridiculous. That is pure greed. And the narcissism, because James Gunn wanted to change certain things about Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman to make it fit in. And they had negotiations with her. And this shows me the kind of character that she got. She doesn't give a fuck about the character. She wanted more money. So good. Fucking clean house. I feel bad that Gal Gadot got swept out with the rest of it because I don't think it's her fault. But he didn't want anything associated with that, and he didn't want the controversy. So good. And people forget this part, which is why I'm playing this, because you have to remember half of the people who were let go, they were attached to this shit in the background. And Patty Jenkins contributed to this. She was given free reign, and she made a terrible Wonder Woman movie. So obviously, there needed to be some control there, and there wasn't. So they went from one end of actually trying to do quality control and nitpicking to the complete opposite end of just letting the film creators do whatever the fuck they wanted to do and not having any kind of structure, because DC didn't have a vision. It didn't have a plan. They were winging it 100%.
Decision, meaning that this film might be one of the biggest losses that WB has made outside of the likes of Justice League, and of course Green Lantern. The film would go on to have a Rotten Tomatoes of 58, a audience review score of 4.1, and is largely looked at as one of the worst things that WB has ever made, even worse than the likes of Justice League, which is pretty tough. But now things get even crazier, as we gotta jump back into our time machine and go all the way back to 2019. We're traveling 3 years back to the release / the firing of Justice League's director, Zack Snyder, who after the release started posting just a few images here or there talking about his version of the film. Suddenly, after the release of the film that following summer, hashtag Release the Snyder Cut started to trend, and Zack Snyder fully leaned into this, saying his film was far better. They cut out hours of footage. His film had heart, but most importantly, his film was completed, and if he could, he would release it so everybody could see it. Over the next few years, there would be a heavy campaign by the most dedicated Zack Snyder fans to give everybody the Snyder Cut. Rumors persisted for years that this was going to happen, and then suddenly the announcement was made. But not before I cover how we got to that point. At one point during the transition period where AT&T ended up buying WB, WB CEO Ann Sarnoff, who replaced Kevin Tujihara, was harassed nonstop, along with other people that were parts of the company that unfortunately had to issue public statements so people wouldn't harass their family and going after them in their personal life.
And I'm going to halt it right here. Keely Chow said, speaking of narcissism, Anthony Stephen Walton has a channel who's dealing with the narcissist. It's called Lotus Dragon Storm. Anyways, getting back to this, I'm torn about this Zack Snyder thing. I like the movie. It's fine. I've watched it like twice, maybe three times. It's a 3-hour movie. It's good. I don't mind it, but I don't believe it's what Zack Snyder originally said. Remember, he had said this was all shot, but then asked for like another 100 million and actually got it. The other thing is too that people forget about this campaign is that the Snyder fans were harassing people and stuff like this. And this is what I'm talking about when I say, like, there's a certain section, and this split the DC fans in half, because the Snyderverse fans, quite frankly, are crazy and delusional with some of this shit. And they were harassing people's family and shit. And that's not cool. And I want to get really quick Justin's take on some of that stuff, because as we're getting into this, as they're pointing out, people's families were being harassed with this fucking Snyder shit.
I didn't actually just full discrepancy. I didn't listen to anything that you were talking about.
Let me just replay this section really quick for you so you can hear what happened, because I want to give context to my feelings towards the crazy Zack Snyder fans.
Was completed, and if he could, he would release it so everybody could see it. Over the next few years, there would be a heavy campaign by the most dedicated Zack Snyder fans to give everybody the Snyder Cut. Rumors persisted for years that this was going to happen, and then suddenly the announcement was made. But not before I cover how we got to that point. At one point during the transition period where AT&T ended up buying WB CEO Ann Sarnoff, who replaced Kevin Tujihara, was harassed nonstop, along with other people that were parts of the company that unfortunately had to issue public statements so people wouldn't harass their family and going after them in their personal life.
So I want to just
Okay,
stop there
okay,
because
okay. Well.
and
All right.
this
Go ahead.
is this isn't just like they're saying this and there's no proof like some people say, oh, I was harassed. No, this was like on the level of what Kelly Marie Tran got, and I use that excuse because you can hate Rose Tico all you want, but it's just proven there's emails and shit. She was absolutely positively what they did to her was wrong, and it was horrible. And Zack Snyder
Oh,
fans
Kelly Marie Tran. Yeah.
and Zack Snyder fans took that and said, "Hold my beer," and
No.
harassed
Oh yes, absolutely. They were
every
so
single
obsessed. I
person.
was I was so annoyed just hearing Lethal
Preach, Justin.
Lightning, and
Preach.
hearing
Go ahead.
Ryan Kennel. Like, it was ridiculous, and the fact that there were emails sent to them, like, that's fucked up. Like, to where, like, you threaten somebody's livelihood, or threaten somebody's life, like that goes like above and beyond. But that, in a way, does force the creators to make a decision of, like, what's the better option? What's the better of two evils? Like, do we release this Snyder Cut? Do we give Zack Snyder the freedom that he wanted? Because he was grieving over the suicide of his own daughter. Like, that's fucked up. Like, to let him go and not have his vision be created, because God forbid, you can't take time off to grieve your daughter who committed suicide, as far as I'm aware. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but
Absolutely not. And I just want to say, my issue with this is
absolutely
none of
not.
that. No, I mean, absolutely not. They shouldn't have fired him. I totally agree with what you're saying. That was horrible. Having a daughter myself, I really felt for him. But this is my issue with what Zack Snyder was saying. And PB has
Okay,
made multiple videos. Go check out Pop Culture PB. He has a very funny video that got such hate. But Zack
which
Snyder
one?
claimed this was already done.
I said
Okay,
which one?
Zack Snyder claimed this movie was already done, but then turned around and got $150 million. And it's like, if you already made a cut of the movie, I kind of feel like with most things with Zack Snyder, he's one of the greatest hustlers I've ever seen of all time. Because you can't tell me just $150 million went to touching up. I believe he had some of it done, but I don't think the movie was completed. And I think the $150 million, it was like watching a completely different movie. So I think that essentially funded a whole new movie. Um, and I don't believe that was even his original vision. I'm just gonna say it, hot take, but I don't think that was. I think he shot Justice League like he wanted to, but I don't think it was his original vision as he claimed. I call it bullshit. I've had this argument several times, but he got it, and and here we are. So let's continue. This is
This
interesting.
would only anger the most hardcore fan base and end up becoming what was essentially a bloodbath of toxicity. Fans would then rally up and start getting money and fan campaigns involved to try to get a campaign going to restore this version of the film that Zack Snyder had completed, raising over $500,000 in donations and also in support to be able to buy ads in the middle of Times Square. WB did take notice, and on the anniversary of Man of Steel, where a stream was held by Zack Snyder and some of the most hardcore fans were invited, Zack Snyder revealed that the Snyder Cut was being restored by him and would see a release on HBO Max. After this announcement in 2019, speculation ran rampant on how quick it would release. It was at this point that we found out that what Zack Snyder said about it being complete wasn't entirely true, and that they needed to finish a lot of special effects, and that also he was going to reshoot some elements. When WB told him no,
And I just want to highlight that for all you people who argued with me for fucking months and years leading up to this, and to PB's point, which was 100% true. the movie was never fucking completed. So I'm sorry, Zach. No, you weren't fucking. You didn't have a cut ready to go and just touching it up. This man had millions of dollars to essentially complete a movie. The movie might have had most of it shot. Matter of fact, they smashed certain elements into the Justice League we originally got, and Joss Whedon just wrote out the rest of the movie because it wasn't completed. But the movie was never fucking done. So people saying, "Oh, it was complete," that was a total crock of shit. That's from the man himself, which he had to reveal to people, which he double spoke and talked the whole fucking time, which was annoying. But this myth that the movie was already done, it was not fucking completed. Justin, you've worked on movies. Would you call that a completed film? Because I'm curious. Maybe I'm dumb and I just don't know movie making. But to me, if you say a movie's done, yes, you can have post production and things that you have to do, or a couple of expensive VFX, for instance. But if you say something's done, to me, that means it's ready to go. You just got to do the sounds here and there, the different effects, the green screen, shoot whatever.
That's
Not
certainly
$100 million and shoot a complete whole fucking ending.
That's certainly what's been implied. And if that's the case, if he really had a 4-hour cut done and ready to go, good for him. But I highly doubt there was a 4-hour movie that was ready to be released in theaters. I remember that it was supposed to be split up into 2 parts. And
Yeah,
this was supposed
I
to
went
be
over that.
part 1. This part 1, and then part 2 was supposed to be later. I completely get that, but the studio wanted to make it one movie, if I remember correctly. I saw the billboards for it. It's just like, this is the Justice League like sort of movie.
Yeah,
And
HBO Max wanted
yeah,
just one movie to test it.
yeah, it's just I would have preferred it to be split up into 2 with Zack Snyder's vision for sure. And the Snyder fans, the Snyderites, is what they call themselves. They're not unjustified, but the way that they did it was so aggressive to the point where I can, like, at the end of the day, all they wanted was one thing: release the Snyder Cut, and they got what they wanted. And so what the studio did was they gave in. And if you all this tells me is this: if you give into that, then you are allowing yourself for even more harsh criticism and more terrible things to be said about you.
Oh, you froze up there. Uh-oh, he froze. But yeah, like he was saying, that's my other big issue with this, which Justin has an absolutely good point I'm sure he was making, is the fact that there's a certain thing about giving fans what they want, and then there's also giving in to, which leads to more issues down the road with, then, where does it end? And I do believe that the fans should get what they want, and that a lot of movies that get made are in service of the studio, and it's not necessarily what people want to see. But at the same point, too, you can't please everybody, and I do think that there is something to be said about also making something good that people didn't know they wanted, and building the audience that way too. So it's a very fine line you walk when you do stuff like this. And I think that's what Justin was getting at when he faded into the Phantom Zone.
Oh, you're not allowed to. He took it upon himself to go and finish up what he wanted. He got the actors personally to come in and do new scenes and shoot them separately so he could splice them in there. This was in an intent to be able to show people what Justice League 2 and 3 were going to be, as a sort of epilogue to the film. The film would end up finally releasing, but not before its Zack Snyder Cut budget ballooned to $100 million. Upon release, the film did not make money because it came out on HBO Max. But we did get some numbers in terms of streaming. And once all the duplicates were removed and all the individuals that were putting it on repeat were removed, the film ended up getting streamed reportedly 2.2 million times by different devices. And it would then see a physical release a short time later on Blu-ray and DVD. There was also some questions in regards to why it was released in a basic letterbox and black and white. And Zack Snyder simply stated, it's because he wanted to, and that he believed it made it look more like an art house film. And while the release of that film should have been a massive celebration, unfortunately it was not, as just a few short months later, James Gunn, the very same man who was working over at Marvel Studios, who was fired by them just a couple years prior, released The Suicide Squad, a soft reboot / continuation of David Ayer's. The film had a relatively smooth and safe development. The most notable things that happened in it was the use of some of the most obscure characters out there, such as Peacemaker.
And okay, so I'm back right now. For some reason, my internet like completely glitched out. What was I saying? Yeah, so at the end of the day, what I was trying to say was that the people got what they want, and all the studio is going to learn is that we need to listen to fans more. So even though they were so aggressive, the audience has the power, and at the end of the day, I think that's there's two sides to this. Like, one, you shouldn't like ever have to resort to that as a fan. But on the other side, the studios have been so terrible at listening to fans that maybe this is something they needed. So I'm on the fence on this because it was obnoxious. It was aggressive. But at the end of the day, the fans got what they wanted. So giving them what they wanted, now they say like release the Ayer cut. I'm like, okay, give them an inch, they want a mile. Like, you have a point with this, but the studios at the end of the day should be more receptive because of what the fans want, because that's where the money is. And once you negotiate that tactic of that's where the money is, like,
well, I mean, we proved that
without having to resort to families like being threatened or anything like that. Like, if that's what we're talking about, like, Marvel, am I missing something here?
No, Marvel proved that with Deadpool Wolverine. Yes, we could say on the whole, compared to the other Deadpool movies, they might have took off some of the edge. I don't necessarily
a little bit. At least the cocaine side is what they.
Yeah, and the crazy.
That's fine. That's fine. The less cocaine in the world, the better.
But at the end of the day, the numbers are proving they gave the fans what they've wanted to see for years. Logan, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine with Deadpool. And what are the results? And it goes back to your point. Even people who didn't know, I knew people. Okay, so I work at a local bar, security, and even people who aren't comic book fans or don't watch superhero movies or watch, like you say, normies, right? They just watch the basic. They know the hero or they have some kind of connection. I heard in my bar so many times, like, people who aren't into it saying they were super excited for Deadpool and Wolverine. They love Wolverine. They love the X-Men movie. They
love Deadpool. They like the two together for some reason.
And they've been wanting to see this team up for years. And the numbers show. Almost had a billion, Justin.
In Deadpool 2, they teased that.
When Hugh Jackman appeared. Has already almost hit $1 billion. It's like week 3, and
I'm going to be that $1 billion person and go and buy a ticket and then not see it because I've already seen it. That's how much. Like the thing that I say is, if it's a good movie, I will pay to see it. If it's like a gamble, I'm probably not going to see it. Like, I didn't see Barbie or I didn't do the whole Barbenheimer. sort of thing.
Oppenheimer was great. Barbie, I have some issues. One day I'll talk about that.
Barbie actually was pretty decent, all things considered. It was actually a good movie. With Margot Robbie, it worked. With Amy Schumer, it would have been in the tank. Like no question
Margot Robbie
but I will say Oppenheimer, it's just not my kind of movie. I don't care to see it.
Yeah, I take that over Barbie, but I'm a history buff, and I'm not.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. That's the kind of movie.
I in no way have an attachment to Barbie.
Yeah, I won't say that I do have an attachment with Barbie, but I do enjoy that a little bit more than the Christopher Nolan you have to think sort of movie. I would rather get high and watch Barbie and like I would much rather do that as opposed to having to sit there for 3 hours for a movie about a bomb going off. I'm not interested in that.
Dude,
like, that's not my kind of movie. And Christopher Nolan can make whatever movie he wants, and that is a privileged, and I don't say the word lightly, that is a privileged position to be in. Like, he can make whatever movie he wants, and I support that 100%. Will I go see it every single time? Nope. No, I won't. But he's in that position, and I envy that.
We got 15 minutes left. I want to finish up this video, so are you ready? We're getting into the nitty-gritty, and we're getting to the Superman of the DC.
Who's the other guy wearing that twister sort of outfit? Like, whatever dot is where your leg or arm has to go. The fuck is with that guy?
That is a very underrated actor, and he did one of my top horror movies so far of the year, Late Night with the Devil. He is a criminally underrated actor. God, what's his name?
Is he taking a selfie just with Margot Robbie just for fun?
No, he's playing Polka Dot Man. That's a very obscure villain.
It's Polka Dot Man, and it looks like Twister.
That's his costume.
I have thoughts. Go ahead.
Yeah, you got to see the movie. It's actually
all right. Click it. Let's go.
Yeah, because I'm going to look up the cast.
Let's go.
Polka Dot Man, Ratcatcher 2, King Shark, and a few others. It was released at the tail end of the pandemic and on a budget of $185 million and ended up making $168.7 million.
Right?
But when it came to the reception, it has a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes.
No, that's The Suicide Squad. It's the sequel that everyone should have seen.
I see.
A 9.4.
Oh, and Stallone.
Bruce. I love Bruce. Jaws. Great.
Stallone voiced the shark.
That's
in the
movie. It's not a statue. What the fuck?
That's the movie. Yeah, dude, we've got to do a watch along for this movie. You will have such fun with it. It is so fucking nutty.
What the
That's
fuck? This might be. You know what? I give Sylvester Stallone the credit for Spy Kids 3D because he was in it, and Elijah Wood was the guy, and he's like, I'm the guy, and then he dies immediately. And he just came off of Lord of the Rings, and it was so amazing. Spy Kids 3 is actually an underrated classic, for honorable trash.
Oh wait, Zod, Justin, Skywalker, the Jedi, and Zod. Weird. Still hope for the other two Zack Snyder verse. No, that's not going to happen. They scrapped it. Zack Snyder's doing Rebel Moon.
Yeah, no. That's not what I'm saying at all.
They want me to see the previous
I have no dog in this game. Let's continue the video.
Or among fans, and is generally seen as one of the finest comic book films in the last decade. And the film was so successful that James Gunn was allowed to make a spin-off TV series based on John Cena's Peacemaker, which ended up being a pretty big hit for HBO Max and is going to be getting a follow-up. Although the events surrounding it and the continuity and everything is very much unknown and somewhat confusing. But make no mistake about it, that film was a huge hit and showed that WB now had their new golden boy. They were able to steal him from Marvel Studios after he was fired, and now they were going to stick with him, which we'll talk about in just a few short minutes. because during the second half of development of the Suicide Squad, WB officially began work on Black Adam. Now,
And we're going to get into this history. I don't know how much you know, but this is where people want to know the death of the DCEU. So the official death, and I like this movie, but a lot of people didn't, and it's Dwayne Johnson. And this really soured my view on Dwayne Johnson. If you guys don't know my history, I've been a big Rock advocate. Faster is one of my favorite action movies he's ever done. But
I'm also
Dwayne
a big Rock advocate, just so you know.
yeah, I am a huge fan, but
that was a penis reference, just so you know.
I gotcha. I'm still rolling with it. So Dwayne Johnson, if you guys don't know, was at this point, and this is
when he
why
says the Rock is cooking, the ladle is replaced with his dick.
anyways. So the highlight here is that, speaking of power plays, The Rock wanted to take over DC and do things his way. I think he's going to bring it up in this, because this was the moment. This was the thing that finally killed the DCEU. The Rock's narcissism, and I will never forgive him for the shit he pulled behind the scenes that proved he's a total fucking narcissistic asshole. And I'm going to get into it, but this shit is wild, and I think he's going to go into what happened. But The Rock is the one who, at the end, finally put the nail in the coffin of the DCU.
All right. Let's go.
time, they were also start work on Shazam 2. But interestingly enough, we learned very early on that these two films would not have any crossover, they would not mention each other, and that Black Adam would never be appearing next to Shazam. We then found out that The Rock's production company, $7 Production, was actually on hand with this and calling a majority of the shots. The film had a relatively good production. There wasn't too much negativity surrounding it. There wasn't a whole lot of reshoots. Well, there was one, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But the film developed rather smoothly outside of the WB versus WB internal fight in relation to the Shazam side versus The Rock's Black Adam side. The film officially saw its release on October 3rd of 2022 in Mexico and on October 21st worldwide. On a production budget of $260 million, it would make $393 million. The film ended up being a colossal bomb, and with a reported marketing budget of $350 million, and there was no way we were getting more. The film on...
And I want to just stop right here, because people don't understand when they say something's a bomb. I want to make this very clear, because when you hear the numbers, it sounds like the movie actually succeeded. But he's talking about production, that what the movie made covered the production. But what most people don't take into account, and this is super important, is marketing.
Marketing and advertisement.
Marketing and advertisement go directly into the production cost as well. They're seen as two separate things.
Actually, it's sort of, if I may chime in here.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
It's sort of an add-on, if you will. It's an add-on to the initial production. The initial production budget is projected for what it is, but when you don't necessarily accumulate like billboards in LA or like any of that bullshit, or you don't accumulate the trailers that come out, you don't accumulate the entire marketing budget of like, this is a good film. And that's rarely taking anything into consideration at all. So that's why it's a separate budget. You know, production alone, you know, you're talking about like $200 million. That's with the production itself, and especially the special effects budget. So, you know, you're not really taking into account any of the marketing strategies or anything like that, or what you want to do to promote the film. Like, the actors are paid to promote the film, so you have to consider all of those things combined into one, as opposed to what they actually are. Like to actually make the film, the budget is the budget. That's it. Marketing is something completely separate, which makes absolutely zero sense to me, but it is what it is.
And I'm so glad that I actually have you on here. If you don't know, Justin has actually gone through the movie making process, so he has a good idea of this. So when people see these budgets and they see that a movie did 300 or 400 million, and they go, that's fucking fantastic. The movie made its money. Yes, the movie covered what it cost to make the movie, true. But when you add on the extra expenses, the studio still takes a loss of whatever the marketing was, because as Justin just pointed out for us, that is a completely separate fee. So the movie, in essence, made back its production, right? Because it was 150 or 200 million, and it made 397 million plus whatever the streaming was. So roughly we'll round up and say 400 million. But the marketing and the ad campaign was out of fucking control for this movie, and it was 300 million. So if you take those two and add them together, that comes out roughly to about 600 and something million dollars. And the movie made half of that, actually making it a bomb. And so when people come out and they make these random numbers to try to prop up a movie they like, and they go and they give me these stupid numbers, I say, no, the movie is not making money. It's breaking even because you didn't put in what the marketing cost was. You are just comparing it to what the film was originally produced, the cost to produce it. That does not make a successful movie. On the other end of it, people will say a movie's a flop because they don't like it. But if the movie already covered the marketing and the production, anything over that is considered a success. It is revenue that is separate from what it costs to make the movie as a whole. Therefore, it's not a bomb. So when people come out and they want to shit on Marvel movies and things like that, they go, oh, well, it's just like, it's made less of this and blah, 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 and it's not doing $1 billion or whatever. If it's covering the production and the marketing, any money over that is a net gain for the studio. It is a success. Whether you want to hate it or not, you can't fucking argue with numbers. And people tend to do that shit all the time, and it pisses me off because that's just not how it works. I get you don't like something, but numbers don't lie, and facts are facts. We're going to continue. But so, yeah, so this movie, in every metric, unfortunately, even though I liked it, was not a success. It was about
Rotten Tomatoes has a 38, and with audiences, it generally sits around a 4.5. Now, this film marks a significant change into what WB and DC were doing with DC, as the ending of the film sees the return of Henry Cavill's Superman, and it was setting up a brand new wave for the DCEU. Before the film flopped, the ongoing conversation that we learned ever since its release was that The Rock and $7 production were betting pretty high on this film, and WB believed them. So the idea was to bring back Henry Cavill and build up Black Adam versus Superman. But more so, The Rock and his company and WB under new ownership.
And before we get into this, yes, I do know about The Rock went to Disney, but like I said, The Rock has a tremendously terrible attitude. That's why he's not in any of the Marvel projects.
We're going to be doing something else. And what we've learned since then is that the idea was to retrofit what they had with Justice League 2 and 3 to be more of Black Adam versus the Justice League, and then Black Adam and the Justice League versus Darkseid. And for those wondering why Black Adam would be teaming up with them, it's because we learned that in The Rock's contract, he is not allowed to lose. It's either equal footing or he wins. hence why they were making the character an anti-hero. But everything fell apart just a few short weeks after this film's release, as James Gunn and Peter Safran were announced to be heads of a brand new DC studios that will reboot the DC universe with the DCU.
And this is where we get to the superhero of the story, James Gunn. And now, Justin, does this make sense? Because remember, people were bitching about the casting, and I was talking about this, and I think that's why I wanted to go over this video in great length to get people established as to why I don't understand they give James Gunn so much shit.
Oh, the corn sweat guy?
Or no, James Gunn taking over. People were complaining that he was getting rid of old elements, but do you see the internal struggle? What James Gunn was doing is what Marvel is doing
that was
right now.
pretty, like, anybody with a brain can understand why this was disorganized and just so.
But no, there's a lot of DC fans I've argued with.
Well, no, oh yeah,
are
that's
Snyder
fine. That's
leftovers.
fine and all. They wanted it to be intact as is because they, you have. That's the hard part, is that you have great spots like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. That's my Wonder
Patty
Woman.
Jenkins fucked that up though, because
I mean, she did. It's the creators that fucked it up, but the cast,
but no,
some of the cast were great, but in order for the DCEU to be sufficient and to be consistent, like really, you needed to have a plan, especially with, the Justice League. That's not something to fuck around with. Like, you need something like Aquaman, like with the boys, for example. You have that Aquaman sort of guy. That's your Aquaman. Like, realistically, like, that is the guy, the Ryan Reynolds sort of guy. And there's so many other things I could talk about, but at the end of the day, you need to have a solid structure and you need to have a plan. And James Gunn, working with Marvel, he knows, kind of, at the very least, like, we'll be kind and say kind of. He at the very least understands what it's like to have a structure and have a plan.
Exactly.
And he was not getting Kevin Feige's job, like, or as you call him, Kevin Foggy, but whatever. Like, he's not getting his job, so at the very least, like, he's looking for a promotion, and what better than to actually implement the stuff that he loves and actually do something with the DC universe, because it, like, if you think about it this way, who are the three superheroes that you think of when you were a child? For me,
Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman.
Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. Spider-Man was it. Like, Spider-Man was the fucking
you got to remember, I'm a DC fan, but yeah.
Any normie will say Superman first, and then Batman, and then they'll say Spider-Man. That's just the reality, or at least the reality that I grew up with. Take it for what you will, but at the end of the day, like, yes, Killy Chow is absolutely correct. Good luck to David Corn Sweat. Oh my goodness, that's a terrible last name.
We're just gonna call him David.
Corn Sweat.
He is going to be a great Superman, but he can't get Annie wet.
Anna wet? Who's Anna?
I'm also a DC fan. Good, you're on the right side of history.
Who's Anna?
Don't know. I'm sure we'll get more on that.
I mean, are we talking about that Star Wars girl? Oh, because she likes Henry Cavill. Yeah, but she's also married now, so congratulations to Anna.
But I gotta say, Henry Cavill can get me wet. I'm just saying. Anyways,
what the fuck? What the fuck did you just say? But at the end of the day, I think it's very clear. Like, if you don't have a vision, you will not, or a clear direction of where you want to go, Just look at Kevin Feige. Like he's very organized. He understands comic books, and that's undisputable. I mean, despite the hurdles that they have had to go through, it's very clear that he is the guy to go to, and to be in that position is a privileged position. And James Gunn, working with somebody who is very familiar with that and making arguably one of the best MCU films of all time, Guardians of the Galaxy. Hold on. Let me finish. All right.
I'm sorry, Bitchy was just she's like,
all right, just
"Oh,
mute
the
your
fans."
microphone and let me talk. All right, asshole.
All right, I'm gonna mute myself for a second. You go.
Okay, as long as you can listen, just give me a thumbs up, or don't. So at the end of the
thumbs
day,
up.
all right. So at the end of the day, it's great to learn from somebody who knows their shit, or at the very least, understands what it takes to make a series like this. And whether, like, my personal opinion on Guardians of the Galaxy is plain and simple. I was stoned out of my mind when I saw it, and the only thing that my roommate at the time said to me was, I kept saying, why is there a talking tree? Why is there a talking raccoon? This is bullshit. This is dumb. I don't understand this. So
Yeah, I agree.
but he did direct, like if I were to revisit it, I would have a totally different opinion. And a lot of people really love Guardians of the Galaxy because of the direction it took, the fact that it was a trilogy. It was a trilogy of apparently like really good movies. Apparently, Guardians 3 was the most well regarded of Phase 5, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
It's probably like the number one slot. So he knows superhero movies. He knows characters. He understands comics. So why not hire a guy like that who has that sort of mentality? I mean, he even directed like the Scooby-Doo movies and got that right despite the limitations that he had. I mean, he really got it right. Like the Mary Jane joke in the first movie, it's like, that is my favorite name. And like casting wise, he nailed it. So he has proven himself to be a worthwhile CEO, if anything. So as DC fans, as a fan of Batman and Robin, I expect a goddamn great Robin out of this. A goddamn great Superman, a great Wonder Woman. I wish that we could keep Gal Gadot, but if that's the only thing that's the only criticism I have, is that we don't get Gal Gadot because.
And I just wanted to, before I get back to finishing off
Yeah.
this video, because I'm almost done, I just wanted to comment on that. Gal Gadot was single-handedly torpedoed by Patty Jenkins. So what I was trying to say was, he didn't just get rid of her, actually, and you can see this because James Gunn talks about this. He had interviews with Patty Jenkins. She wanted more money, and this was proven. You missed the part where I went over Patty Jenkins' history. She got 50 million from the streaming, and so did Gal Gadot, and that movie flopped when it streamed. They, unlike Black Widow, which Scarlett Johansson got fucked by Disney, they got paid out, and the movie still flopped, and WB took an extra loss. So I don't feel bad for Patty Jenkins. I feel bad for Gal Gadot, because when she talks shit to James Gunn, and she tried to badmouth him afterwards too. But after he said nope, not having it, because he wanted to get rid of all of the old people trying to one up each other, and he's like, if you don't see my plan, then there's the door. And she took the door, and he was like, sorry, but he didn't want confusion. And it's like, Gal Gadot, no hard feelings, but you're attached to this. And she had her chance. She could have brought Gal Gadot with her. He was willing to take Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman and Patty Jenkins as the writer as the next film, and people can look this up. I might even post links to the article with the proof. He's got receipts. Like, they had meetings because he didn't want it to be seeming like he was being sexist. He was going to have them in the universe, but Patty Jenkins did not want to conform to what he had envisioned for the universe. So he said, all right, there's the door. And unfortunately, she put Gal Gadot in that situation because Gal Gadot was under her as that Wonder Woman. And so that's how she lost that position because he was going to take her back. So James Gunn coming under fire in that is complete bullshit, and no one blames Patty Jenkins for it because that was directly her fault. If you see, that's like somebody, Justin, going to Kevin, and he's like, "Hey, I'm willing to include you in the Marvel universe or whatever. I like what you did, but here's the thing. You're going to have to make some changes so it fits into what we're doing. But I'm willing to let you be a director and a writer and let you
all right.
actors."
So TLDR, they said, okay, based on what I'm hearing, they said, hey, this is what we're doing, and she didn't want to do it. She didn't agree to it, so she's out. That sucks. Actually, that really sucks because she is, like, out of all of the casting decisions that were made, she was the best one.
Oh, yeah. And it sucks for her because it wasn't even her. She was wanting to do it. She was ready to go. She was excited. So just imagine, Justin, you have a job that you have lined up, and the person representing you tanks your opportunity. Not even you. James Gunn was on board. He loved Wonder Woman and the rendition. He just said a few little tweaks here and there because it doesn't quite fit into what my vision is. And if you can do that, I'm on board. Bring Gal Gadot with you. Let's continue this.
Well, that should not impede on the casting decision because you can. Well, at the end of the day, if you think about it, if they're doing a total 100% rebranding, they better get a goddamn great Wonder Woman because if they want to absolve themselves of the entire DCEU, that's fine. Getting rid of Patty Jenkins, great, because Wonder Woman 84, I didn't even bother to watch it when I saw Chris Pine and the trailer. I was like, I'm not watching that. I mean, you have to understand, like, that first movie, like, my father had been waiting since Linda Carter was Wonder Woman, and he's been waiting for years, and it's the only thing that he ever asked me. Like, actually, two movies. One was it was either what was the movie where they killed Osama bin Laden with Chris Pratt?
Oh, that was a great movie. That was
It's not American Sniper, but it's something else.
No. It was shit. 30 Dark Zero.
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah. 30 Dark Zero, something like that. Yeah, like, he made me, like, he actually said, son, we're gonna watch a movie. That was one, and the other one was Wonder Woman, because he has been begging and pleading, like, to the high heavens to watch a Wonder Woman movie on the big screen, and that was it. And that was a good movie. That was a solid, good movie, and he was not disappointed.
So
And
let's finish this up because I just want to make a comment.
But what I'm saying is that, like, at the end of the day, like, if you have to absolve all of the previous baggage, if Gal Gadot is one of them, that fucking sucks because she is the cinematic Wonder Woman. Like,
Yeah, the next one's gonna have a really tough shoes to fill because the difference is she's the only Wonder Woman where you've had several Batman, several Superman. It's easy to replace those, but
at
with
least
Wonder
cinematic.
Woman, you only
You have
ever
Linda
had
Carter,
one.
but, like,
That's a show, though. I'm talking about one live action.
We wish that we had a Wonder Woman movie with Linda Carter. We wish.
Yeah, that never happened.
DCEU was officially over. But trust me, there's a lot more to this story, so hang on. The Rock was publicly, in a press announcement, fired from Black Adam. Henry Cavill was also fired, and he would not continue to play Superman. And just a few short days after that, Superman Legacy, a brand new reboot of Superman, directed and developed by James Gunn, was hitting in 2025. And now that this was public knowledge, all eyes were on the 4 remaining DCEU projects and what was going to happen with them. First up was the follow-up to Shazam, aka Shazam: Fury of the Gods. Director David F. Sandberg was back, along with the rest of the team. Now, something I didn't mention before that I want to mention right now is that Peter Safran, the co-head of DC Studios, was a producer on this film. And he clashed with the producers on Black Adam because they stepped over him, went to the higher-ups, and demanded that Black Adam be removed from Shazam 1 and Shazam 2, which unfortunately left Shazam 2 in a pretty bad place. Upon the release of the film, the director pretty much dismissed the film as something he doesn't even want to talk about, and the only thing he said was, "I'm glad I got paid, and I'm done." Zachary Levi ended up having a public...
So just to badge this, this is a running theme that I've covered, and thank you everybody who's been continuously watching. I've had up to 67 people, so I'm glad you're enjoying this retrospective and my painful tragedy. But just think about this, Justin, because we've heard this how many times, and you've dropped in and out. But what's been consistent in this story, Justin? The directors getting fucked, the writers getting fucked because of internal political bullshit. And
political, that's not necessarily that's not necessarily like political in terms of like who has the presidency.
No, I mean
that's political as in like, you know, like that's not political, but it's business decisions and business decisions that have been so poorly run that they are so disorganized. Like I completely understand that. And it just comes down to, you know, that's why you have somebody from Marvel come in, because they know what success means. And they have seen
Hunter,
success.
Yes.
And that's why I get so mad when somebody is like, oh my God, it's going to impede on the Snyder version or whatever the fuck, or the Ayer cut, or whatever the fuck that was going to be. Like, who cares? Who cares at this point? Like, you needed a rebrand. Like that's at the end of the day, you needed to do a makeover in girl terms. Like, girl, you needed a makeover so bad it's not even funny.
Oh yeah, and you're right. This is part of.
And I'm actually getting red in the face talking about it because like so many people don't understand.
And Hunter, that is part of the rebrand. I do know about WB selling WB games. They want to get out of video gaming. That's probably a topic for another day. But yes, I knew about that, and don't get me wrong, I will address that, but I'm already gone over. So let's finish this because
meltdown where he ended up talking about how women shouldn't be allowed to do certain things. He went on a tirade about the health system, back to insulting women and people that don't like the film, and then finally lashing out at everybody who didn't see the film, calling them various things. It was a very bad thing to witness publicly, but it did happen. With the film's release on March 14th of 2023, with a budget of $125 million, it made $134 million. Its reception was not that great as well. Rotten Tomatoes at 49%, and audiences sitting somewhere at a 4.9. Pretty much everything that was good in the first film is non-existent in this one. But that's not the only film to release in 2023, as just a few short months later, on June 12th of 2023, we saw the release of The Flash, which at this point had been in development for 20 years. The film did see the star Ezra Miller, who of course starred in Batman v Superman, star in the film, but unfortunately this film is covered in controversy, so we're going to have to take a little bit of a time machine jump to 2022. The Flash was one of the first films that WB started to work on after Batman and Robin. And it went through multiple iterations, multiple stages of development, and didn't enter an actual stage of development till 2016. At this point, there was 4 groups of different directors.
No. This is a history. You can't blah, blah, blah. This is very important because just think about it. 2016.
Okay. We do have to pause for
and writers that all tried to make a difference.
What is that?
I said we do have to pause for reasons, copyright, the
Oh yeah.
bullshit.
The
All right,
thing with
let's
this,
just yeah, let's take a smoke break. All right, let's continue.
Version of the film. From a slapstick comedy by Lord and Miller, the people responsible for the Spider-Verse film, to a
I would have
more
loved to have seen
grounded
that.
and almost dark and sinister version by Rick Famuyiwa, to another one that
Ooh.
was supposed to be a lot more like the Flashpoint comics.
Wait a minute,
from
wait a
Seth
minute, wait a
Graham
minute,
Smith.
wait a minute. Pause. Rick, is that like
Fukushima.
Rick who directed a Mandalorian episode, Rick F or whatever
yes,
he was? Is that the same guy? Okay, because
Same
he
guy,
made like
yeah.
one of the best episodes, like with I think it was the Bill Burr episode
Yeah,
of Mandalorian.
that's what I'm trying to tell you. That guy was originally attached. Justin, how cool would that Flash movie would have been? That would have been fucking awesome.
I mean, if Bill Burr was in it, it would have been 10 out of 10.
Okay, I'm saying taking
I've
Bill
seen him
Burr
live.
out of it.
He's great. I actually saw him live, like with my siblings, and they talked about. He talked about. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. The best stand-up.
Okay, but
like
focusing on
bar to none. But Rick F is what I'm gonna call him. He has a vision. He has he's brilliant, and let's get this shit over with.
To the final version we got from Andy Muschietti, the film ended up showing exactly how many changes it went through in the final product.
No, Andy Muschietti, he's the dude who made It, Chapter 1 and 2. Yeah, they got that guy.
I see. All right.
They
and
got
Ezra
that
Miller
guy
is
to
looking
do the
is looking
Flash
like the lead singer from Måneskin, but Måneskin is talented, so.
Fucking Ezra, you know my feelings on this piece of shit.
Yeah.
Before we get there, we got to talk about the star of the film, Ezra Miller.
Oh,
Who ended
yeah,
up
let's
getting
dive
caught
into
up
that
in multiple
fuckface.
controversies during the development of the film. Not only was the
we know.
actor seen
Let's
multiple times on film assaulting people, also arrested multiple times for breaking and entering, possession of a firearm, connections to kidnapping and a cult, and various other things that have been covered extensively by not just us, but multiple other people and outlets. But the one shining beacon in the sky for this film was the long-awaited return of Michael Keaton, who was returning as Batman in not just this film, but also the announced Batgirl spin-off in the DCEU, which unfortunately was canceled prior to getting into deep post-production. And then during the development of The Flash, there was reshoots to fix up Michael Keaton's Batman and change massive elements of what they intended to do with him. One of the biggest ones was removing him from the ending of the film, as he was supposed to remain DCEU's Batman going forward, which would also have a ripple effect on Aquaman 2, the upcoming / canceled Batgirl film, and also a Batman Beyond film that was canceled.
Wait. So they cancel all this shit to have Michael Keaton return. This could have been the moneymaker that would have turned the DCEU around, and they just abandoned it. And that is something that I kind of
No, but keep in mind though, this was all set into motion by people who were already cleared out by the time James Gunn got here. James Gunn just got saddled with this. So just picture you're coming in, right? You're James Gunn. You know vaguely what's going on, but it's like becoming president, right? You inherit all the bullshit that from the administration from before. So you come in and they've got 5 projects in development for the DCEU, which, by the way, he renamed the DCU, which I like better. EU is just fucking a mouthful. Anyways,
EU is just like EU.
Now, keep in mind, James Gunn has stated several times, like he loves Michael Keaton's Batman. He's a big fan. He loves those movies. He loves Michael Keaton as Batman. But now, just envision you're inheriting this, and you got these great concepts, but you got a star who's losing their fucking mind in Ezra Miller, and you have Michael Keaton productions that were put into deep development when you got there. And now you have two choices, right? You're rebranding everything. You've gotten rid of Gal Gadot, who would have been the more sensible option to keep, and Henry Cavill because of The Rock and his bullshit. And now you have this troublemaker fucking Flash, and you have Michael Keaton attached to this, and you're going, what am I supposed to do with this? Because there's 3 fucking films they already greenlit before they even, the guy they put in charge, they saddled him with this bullshit before he even took the job and said, okay, you got to deal with the fans. You wanted this. This is good luck. And it's like, you know what? I don't blame him, because it's like, I like these ideas, but once again, Justin, we have the problem. Where does it fit? Yeah, where are we going? Where are we going with this, right? Like, don't get me wrong. He probably looked at having a star like Michael Keaton, and keep in mind, Michael Keaton has had a resurgence with Birdman and that movie he did about McDonald's, the founder, which was fucking excellent. He won an award for it.
I mean,
great movies, right?
And not to mention, he's an MCU character with the first Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
Not Far From Home. What was it? Homecoming. Yeah. So he, that was right after a couple years after Birdman, and he had that resurgence. He was in the MCU, and then you have him back as Batman. That's kind of cool. Like, Marvel has been doing this very well. Let's take again Deadpool versus Wolverine for an example. They use they use that sort of void and sort of like time variance sort of to their advantage of bringing back people, and Wesley Snipes being in a movie, that's not easy to do, and having him kick ass.
Dude, do you know how many people in my theater went fucking nuts when they saw
probably everybody. Everybody.
Oh my god, dude, that theater fucking went crazy because nobody knew. Thank God.
2 world records apparently, and I bet that's what Ryan Reynolds was like. Hey, you're gonna break 2 world records. How does that sound? Like,
so let's get through the last.
Like, all right, show me the money, and it's like, here's a few $1 million, whatever.
So let's get to the ending of this. I do want to finish this out because this is very fascinating. And once again, Michael Keaton was just a tragic, circumstance in this, like Henry Cavill or Gal Gadot.
Collateral damage.
He was collateral damage, and this has nothing to do with his abilities.
I would say, though, because nobody fucking knows about Michael Keaton's involvement to this extent, they can still do it. They can still do a multiverse. They can still have Michael Keaton back, but they need to do it wisely. Like, if anything, like if they'll ever come back again. But at this point, this is a rebranding, and they need to do what they need to do, and hopefully they'll be able to film something with Michael Keaton as Batman before the inevitable happens. I'm not lying.
Finally, after all of these problems, The Flash released on June 12th of 2023. After multiple people, such as James Gunn and Tom Cruise, said it's the greatest comic book film of all time, let's see how the audience responded. Well, with a budget of $220 million, the film made $271.3 million, not posting a profit when you factor in theatrical take and, of course, marketing. And when it comes to the reviews of the film, it sits at a 63 on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6.1 with audiences. But that's still not it, as just a few short months after that, we saw the release of Blue Beetle, which started production at the same time as Batgirl and Wonder Twins. Wonder Twins, which was canceled literally 2 weeks into production.
Dude, the only thing I like about Blue Beetle is it has Miguel.
Batgirl canceled after it finished shooting, my avatar and Blue Beetle made the cut. Literally nothing bad during the entire production of this film. Nothing went wrong. The film was relatively smooth in its entire production and release. With a budget of $125 million on the production side and $100 million on marketing, it made $130.8 million, becoming another flop in WB's catalog. Now, Blue Beetle can largely stand on its own outside of the mainline DCEU, and with a relatively good reception from fans and critics, sitting at a 78 on Rotten Tomatoes and a 8.4 with fans, James Gunn would quickly announce when the film released that they intend to keep Blue Beetle in the DCU. So the actor, the suit, and everything will stay. The film's continuity may or may not matter, but they like it, and it's staying in some way, shape, and form.
And from what I heard, so this is the announcement that they just made, and I'm super excited about this. Let's give Wheelchair Miguel a hand. They're going to keep Blue Beetle because its story is so separate. And they're going to team him up with the new Booster Gold movie, which is canonically in the comic books. So I'm happy for that actor because in Cobra Kai,
it works out.
He's good. He's
yeah,
a good
it
actor.
works out very well for Xolo Mandueñez, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He is a great actor, and he needs a job after Cobra Kai. Because it's about
and I want
this would be perfect for him.
I also want to
if he's the only one that's kept, okay. And
I want to point out too, he I seen the behind the scenes and stuff like this. He is such a nerd and he's actually a fan of Blue Beetle. That's been his dream. So I gotta say, this is where I don't think people see what James Gunn is doing. But he's actually he's getting people who care about the characters and people who have heart and want to do the work. And he's incorporating that. And I think it's cool that he's going to let this continue, and he has faith in somebody who clearly cares about the character. And I think unlike in this movie, where I don't think you got to see the full range, I think James Gunn, because one thing he's good at as a director is pulling out performances. I think we're going to see some amazing acting from, I always call him Miguel, so I'm just going to continue that. But from my boy Miguel,
that's fine.
I think you're going to see him give a movie that's going to be the movie that should have been put out. And I'm glad he gets a second chance. And I think if you give him that second movie, he's going to really shine, and people will take notice, and it'll be just like what anything else James Gunn has done, right? Who the fuck were the Guardians of the Galaxy before James Gunn? He was the one.
What the fuck was a live action Scooby-Doo movie before
James Gunn?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They had fucking Zazu as the villain. The guy who voiced Mr. Bean was the villain in that movie, and
that's amazing.
Turns out to be Scrappy Doo, and I was like, "What?"
Dude, Sarah Michelle Gellar.
My mind was blown, and Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze. Yeah. Hire a guy whose name is Fred. It's Matthew Lillard. Matthew Lillard is the quintessential Shaggy, to the point where they still he's still employed by Warner Brothers to voice after Casey Kasem passed away. He was his successor. Casey Kasem said to him, if I remember correctly, just he's like, I like you, or something like that.
dude, Matthew Lillard,
he is Shaggy. From
there's
Scream,
some people who are just the character, and
they are just born to play that person. And even Daphne, not Daphne, but Velma, the girl from Freaks and Geeks,
perfect.
Lisa something. I don't remember her name, but she was great for Daphne, and she's also sexy. Holy shit. And Seth Green, Falling in Love with her like literally slipping around. I mean, like it's
Dude, it's perfect.
everything works out for a reason, you know.
So let's
So
continue. We're almost done.
Let's get the rest of this over with.
DCEU. Believe it or not, we're still not done. During the production of various stages of the DCEU, if you look at this, you're going to realize that there's a lot of canceled projects, such as Static Shock, Supergirl, and Zatanna, among other films that were announced that never saw the light of day, such as Cyborg and Green Lantern. There's also various other directors and actors that were attached to various projects, such as Steven Spielberg's Blackhawks, and they then in development whole spin-off of the DCEU focusing on the Justice League Dark characters, such as, once again, Swamp Thing, Deadman, Constantine, and various others that have at this point all been canceled. But it's still not over, as the last film in the DCEU did see its release on December 19th of 2023. This being Aquaman 2, aka Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, with a production budget of over $215 million, reported to be about $275 to $300 with multiple reshoots to remove multiple Batmen. The film made over $400 million. It's still not profitable, but it is the biggest success in the most recent release catalog for WB's DCEU. The film did see the return of Jason Momoa as Aquaman, Amber Heard as Mera, and of course, her very public problems really impacted this film, people's perception, and whether or not people even cared about it. Her very public battle with Johnny Depp was definitely a huge factor in this film not doing as good as the first, but also the fact that people just don't care about Aquaman in general anymore because this universe is dead.
They never did.
And I want to just point this out because we got like 2 or 3 minutes left, thank God. But I want to just say, Amber Heard, I blame solely for this film, and even on my channel.
Zod, maybe we finish this out and.
Okay, but I do want to highlight this because I do have to take those short breaks. Amber Heard tanked this movie. I remember, and people, you can leave comments below if you're just coming into this or whatever. I know a lot of people in this community alone because I followed the whole Amber Heard Johnny Depp fiasco. And thank you. That's actually part of the reason for the growth of my channel, which I appreciate and love all of you guys who've stuck with me. Thank you so much. But Amber Heard, I remember a lot of people who watched Aquaman 1 who are subscribed to me who said they absolutely refused to see this movie just based on the fact that she was even in this film. And WB still wouldn't cut her completely out of this movie, and I think it was a mistake. There were talks of recasting her, and they should have recast her. You could get anybody in a red wig. She brought nothing to this character. And that was a mistake, I think, that really hurts this movie. And even James Wan defended her being in this movie, which was a mistake he made. And it shows in the box office.
The big mistake that was made when I saw it with Black Angus is that we paid for a 3D viewing, and it was a 2D viewing, and we had to see the whole first 15 minutes again. I mean,
I don't.
It was torturous. Like it was not worth
it. Prior to this film, so it was never going to be a huge hit because people's investment wasn't there. And that officially brings us up to the legacy of the DCEU.
This guy is awesome, by the way.
As a rival to.
Oh yeah, and by the way, if you want to check out this person, because when I do commentary, I do like to, unlike other YouTubers, give credit to the developer in the link in the description. No, we gotta put this out because it's like there's legal implications here, so I gotta go through this spiel. Check out this person's channel, and not just because it's the right or legal reasons, it's just the right thing to do for good creators like this. He did a great video. Go check out Comics Chats, links in the description, and the link for this video is in there where you can watch it yourself. And if they get a hold of this and notice I'm commenting on their video, thank you very much. This is very informative. They dove really in depth and they put in a lot of work. So this is a great video and it's why I'm reviewing it on my channel. But yeah, I just want to give credit to the creators because they put in tons of hard work that I was definitely not going to do. Dude, you know me. Look at all of this shit. There was no way I was digging through all of it. Like, maybe if you helped me, I would have done something like this. But, oh, so sexy. I'm sorry. Not you, Justin. My girl. Yeah, I mean, I guess people would find you sexy, but, not me personally because I don't roll like that. But let's just continue.
Marvel Studios, which started as a concept way ahead of the MCU's debut, was a stop-and-go effort right from the start, managing to not course-correct when fans demanded it, doubling and tripling down on what fans didn't like, telling audiences to get in line and like it or get out, allowing a very toxic fandom to take over and meet their demands, which would only result in more negativity. And I didn't even want to cover the hashtag restore the Snyderverse aspect, which is still going on. The lasting legacy of the DCEU seems to be almost non-existent, as when it comes to shared universes, it's not even the second biggest one after the MCU. That would still go to WB's very own Monsterverse. The DCEU came in with a lot of promise and a lot of fans that did not like the MCU style that wanted to get on board. But ultimately, by the time it was all said and done after a mere decade in theaters, the universe is dead and its lasting legacy is more negative films than positive receptions. Most of the actors have moved on, most of the most hardcore fans have left YouTube, and all eyes are now on James Gunn and what he is going to be able to do with the debut of Superman Legacy in 2025. So once again, I want to thank you all.
So that's the end of the video. Go check them out for all of the plugs and stuff. But yeah, I think this was very informative, and that's why this went on for 3 hours because I had to talk and I underestimated. God, almost an hour video, and then commenting in between is a little bit longer. But I wanted to give my take because I thought it was the most comprehensible breakdown, and I wanted to put into perspective just where I'm coming from, where people say, why do you defend James Gunn? Why do you think he's the savior? And Perps agrees with me. If you look at the history, people have a lot of revisionist points of views that they take on these things where they think something is better than what it was, but they forget. And I lived in the time period. I've seen every one of these fucking movies, every single one, right down to Blue Beetle, except for The Flash. I skipped that on principle. Fuck Ezra Miller. But I won't pay him a fucking dime. I didn't even want to see it on HBO, but fucking PB badgered me. I won't give any money to that man. He's an abuser and a piece of shit and should not be given any of your guys' money. Same could be said about Amber Heard. I didn't see that in the theaters. I saw that on Max. Because I'm not gonna fucking fund that cunt either. But with that being said, I've seen all the other movies, even Blue Beetle, every one of them. Shazam 2, I've seen them all in theaters, and people forget that these movies weren't well received. So when you go online and you start badgering James Gunn and shooting somebody down, remember, people who talk shit about Christopher Nolan, people talk shit about these guys who came through and they had a vision, and what they all had in common is they had a vision, they had a story, they weren't fucking interfered with, and they delivered a good product because we let them cook. We let their ideas be shared. We let them have their moment to create. And when you let a creator be creative and you let them see their vision through, and they got good ideas and they've got structure and understanding of the characters, you get something special. And James Gunn has come in and restructured everything. He has a vision, he has an idea, he has uh, an actual coherent fucking list of things coming out and plans, and he knows where he's going with the story. He said in a recent interview, we are not going to promote something until it's done. We're not going to okay something and give away previews until we have scripts and casting. He is doing what a responsible fucking director, writer, or someone who's the head of these projects should do. And he is personally seeing to every project and making sure that it has one coherent focus. This is what Kevin has been praised for years. So what I don't fucking understand is people's negativity already when he's doing all the same shit that Marvel did. He might be doing it a couple of years later, but Marvel's been in a decline. This is a first hopeful ray of sunshine DC has had in the past 20 fucking years. And I'm actually going to be alive to see it. So that's my take. Let the fucking man cook. Justin, what do you think before I head up out of here? Because I've been way longer than I wanted to. I did not want to do almost a 4-hour stream. Justin agrees 100%. Look at that. He's like in total agreement. Hey, Justin, you still there? Yeah, but so anyways, what I wanted to say is the point of me doing this big long stream is to just drive home a fact that I'm excited about the future. I wanted to tell you guys about the announcements about James Gunn and his interviews, and I've been kind of leading through and just kind of why I'm doing this series and why I'm excited to start reporting on DC news and projects. And you got to understand, as a long fan of DC, I have not had much to be excited about. And I'm glad for everybody who has watched this, because this was really interesting to go back into history and see exactly what went wrong. Where did we fail? And I think that you can't change what's going on and you can't make things better until you know where you've been and the mistakes that were made. And me personally, I'm hopeful and optimistic for DC's future. And I'm looking forward to bringing you guys more great content. So tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a stream for DC Afternoon. I'm going to be doing more coverage and just some little articles here and there. I'm going to be, I believe that they've announced who Wonder Woman is, so I'll be releasing that. And also the casting for other things is starting to come out. I think we're starting to see James Gunn's plan unfold these last couple of weeks, and things are going into full swing. I'm super excited for the future. 2025 to me is going to be the year of DC, and I can't wait for DC to finally take its place where it belongs. And I don't look at it as competing with Marvel. I just want fucking movies that are comparable to what Marvel is doing. So thank you everybody for watching. Please hit that like, share, subscribe. This is a little longer than I wanted to. Almost 4 fucking hours. I think this is one of the longest streams I've done. But I really wanted to put into context and show you guys the history of DCEU and why it's so important that they take their time, despite the criticisms and the backlash and the stupid fucking weird Snyder fans. You got to focus it. And even if people, this is a case where people don't know what they want from the DC, and you got to show them what the plan is. And I think we're in for a special treat with this new James Gunn DCU. I'm happy with all of his choices. I'm happy with all of the interviews and what he's had to say. I think they're taking 100% the right approach. They're not trying to compete with Marvel now. They're trying to build a universe. And that's the key. Don't try to beat the other guy. Just do what the other guy is doing. Do it better. Make better stories. Make better characters. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Click that like, share, subscribe. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Justin, for joining the conversation. He's just in stunned silent, but how amazing this stream has been. And as always, remember, here in the Phantom Zone, there is only one rule, and that is kneel before General Zod.